Hello, this is part 2 of Was born in noble but I chose to lead warriors, pay 1 gold gain 10,000 loyalties. Chapter 21, Jiangdong Kid Wants to Revolt. The arrival of Yang Xiuwang Kan and Ruan Yu instantly brought the atmosphere to a climax. If at first there were only groups of 3 or 5 people talking quietly, now there are waves of people here and they're making loud noises. Yang Xiu does not need much introduction, he is a model of cleverness that backfires in later generations. Wang Kan and Ruan Yu are not ordinary people either, they are both listed as one of the 7 sages of Jianan in later generations. Wang Kan was born into a famous family. His great-grandfather Wang Gong was the Grand Commandant during the reign of Emperor Shun of Han, and his grandfather Wang Chang was the Minister of Works during the reign of Emperor Ling of Han. They were both famous scholars of the time and were among the 3 dukes. His father Wang Qian is now the chief clerk of General He Jin. It can be said that in the previous generation the Wang family was definitely not inferior to the Yuan family. Wang Kan himself was also quite good. His poems in Fu were the best among the 7 scholars of the Jianan period, and he was called King Chao together with Chao Ji later. Although Ruan Yu's status was not as noble as Wang Kan's, he was a student of Cai Yong, so he was naturally talented. Ruan Yu was very good at writing. When it comes to writing letters and proclamations of this era, the first person that comes to mind is Chen Lin and the second is Ruan Yu. Moreover, Ruan Yu also inherited Cai Yong's attainments in music. His son Ruan Ji and grandson Ruan Xian carried forward his achievements and were both listed as 7 sages of the bamboo grove. All 3 of them were influential figures in Kyoto. Not to mention the officialdom, at least in the literary world they were definitely rising stars that attracted much attention. In the eyes of most people these 3 were the protagonists today and the others were just supporting roles. There was no false reputation under a great name, and the disciple that Yuan Wei finally chose must be one of the 3. With the arrival of the 3 protagonists Yang Xiuwang Kan and Ruan Yu, the topic naturally turned to the 4 little talents. 3 of the little talents have already arrived, so is the 4th far behind? I say that kid called Sun Quan, wouldn't he dare to come? Haha, if he doesn't come he has self-awareness. Maybe he didn't want to come, he just peed his pants at home. Brother Lee, what you said makes sense. It makes sense. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, who on earth is Sun Quan to be one of the 4 talented scholars? How much knowledge can a person from the countryside have? If you add up all the books in his house, can they be half as many as mine? Besides, he is the son of a military family. It's not that I look down on military families, but aren't they usually big and strong men? They may be good at leading troops in battles, but reciting poems and composing essays? Ha, it's really funny just thinking about that scene. If he dares to come, I will make him piss his ass and send him back crying. Oh? From the tone of Brother Chen, do you want to give Sun Quan a warning? I'm naturally responsible for this kind of thing. To be honest, I really want to get my 3-year-old brother here so that others won't accuse me of bullying the weak. Brother Chen dares to be the first in the world. I admire you. Really? If we always reason and given, people who know us will understand that we are being humble, but people who don't will think that guy is really something. My reputation is a small matter, but we can't let people look down on all of us talented people in Kyoto. You're right. Yang Xiuwang and Ruan Yu and their group may not be able to take action due to their status. If we don't take action, then no one will. Let's do it now. Send them back to where they came from. Haha, think about it carefully. One of the 4 young geniuses was stepped on by us. Even though he was just there to make up the numbers, it's still a good story. What a wonderful story. I have a poem for it. Please judge for yourself. A slender little boy dressed in fine clothes sits by the Jiangdong well looking at the sky. He does not know the vastness of the clouds in the capital, but only a patch of moss in a frog pond. Chang Kong, I can actually write poetry, I am a genius. Good poem. Good poem. Hush, keep your voice down, maybe Sun Quan has already arrived. So what if he comes? He should be allowed to listen carefully. However, if Sun Quan really came, he should be now. Not far away, Sun Quan turned and left before being discovered. At that moment Sun Quan almost couldn't help but rush up to teach this bunch of rubbish a lesson. Do you think Sun Quan is a hindrance to you? Why do you mock him like this? He took the position of one of the 4 little talents? Please, if there is no Sun Quan, there will only be 3 little talents, which is meaningless to you. You will never be able to fill that position. It's okay not to dare to compete with the top, but you only dare to bully the weak. Even 3-year-old children despise you. Sun Quan was not a reckless person. If he went up rashly, he would not know whether he could win or not. Even if he won, what would happen? The final result would only be that Sun Quan and the group of people would be thrown out by the Yuan family. After today, Sun Quan would become the laughingstock of the entire capital. Temporary tolerance is only for a bigger explosion. Sun Quan was angry, he was really angry. Sun Quan decided to slap these people in the face. Yes, he wanted to compete for fame, he wanted to compete for the first place. Not only that, Sun Quan also wanted to make the seemingly peaceful exam full of gunpowder. He didn't want to simply win the first place. He wanted to overwhelm the heroes and step on the faces of these Kyoto talents to win. He would not give anyone face, nor would he give anyone a chance. Sun Quan would use his absolute posture to make people speechless and leave even if they lost with red ears. It's not the kind of victory where I get 100 points and others get 99 points, but I have to get 100 points while suppressing others below the passing line, or even make them get 0 points. People live by their reputation and trees live by their skin. Sun Quan is going all out today. Even if he uses the skill of let me think twice 3 times, and can create something out of nothing to deal with emergencies, Sun Quan wants to make himself, their Sun family and the whole Jiangdong proud. Let's see who is sitting in the well and who is the toad who doesn't know the height of the sky. Offending people? Are you kidding? Is Sun Quan afraid? The chaotic times are coming. Will the world belong to scholars or to military strategists? Sun Quan turned around and left, originally wanting to find a place to hide first and make careful calculations without being disturbed. He accidentally found a person in the corner who was also alone like him. Of course, it is not ruled out that he was the first one to arrive in the small circle, but if that was the case, he would have kept an eye on the door and waited for his friends to arrive. But this person was obviously different. Sun Quan guessed that he should be from another place like himself and just happened to participate in this selection. If it was at the beginning, Sun Quan would not bother to contact him, but now Sun Quan felt that he was a fellow wanderer. He felt a little comforted and a little warm in his heart. He found the organization. So Sun Quan took 2 steps forward and rushed towards the man as if he had seen an acquaintance. Sun Quan's action obviously attracted the other party's attention. The other party quickly looked around to make sure there were no other targets nearby and then looked at Sun Quan with a confused and even slightly panicked look. Nonsense, anyone who sees a stranger suddenly rushing towards him will be scared, okay? Didn't you see that others subconsciously took a blocking posture? Sun Quan stopped in front of the man briskly, showing his signature harmless smile. Brother, can I stand over here? Please do as you please. So the 2 men stood side by side. Oh, Sun Quan was not taller than them. In short, to outsiders it seemed that the 2 men definitely knew each other. Sun Quan hadn't said a word since he showed up. The guy next to him wanted to leave and find another place, but after a moment's hesitation he asked, "Are you looking for me?" The voice was very soft, as if he was whispering, which was in stark contrast to the noise over there. If it weren't for the fact that there were only Sun Quan and him here, Sun Quan would probably have thought that the other party was talking to himself. It seems that this person has a very low self-esteem, Sun Quan thought to himself. Oh, I just saw that the little brother was alone and felt sorry for him, so I came to keep you company. The other party obviously wanted to say something, but looking at Sun Quan's innocent face, he finally swallowed his words back. Chapter 22, Brother Tangyu. It's a good thing that Sun Quan is just a child, young and always has a smiling face, otherwise others would have left long ago. By the way, I still don't know where this young man is from? Sun Quan asked. Me? Perhaps a little surprised that Sun Quan suddenly asked such a question, but the other party still answered politely, I am from Kyoto. Ah? Sun Quan had an exaggerated reaction on his face. He turned his head and looked at the other person with a hint of sympathy in his eyes. My God, the people in the capital don't have any friends either. Is he isolated? How bad is he? Look carefully, he is not ugly, right? Being looked at by Sun Quan, the little brother blushed a little and quickly added. Beijing, suburbs of Beijing, people from suburbs of Beijing. Oh, no wonder. Sun Quan nodded. I understand. Sun Quan wanted to reach out and pat the other person to comfort him, but he subconsciously dodged. TSK, he is indeed extremely inferior. Those very introverted guys are afraid of strangers and afraid of contact. Moreover, he deliberately said that people from the suburbs of Beijing are people from Kyoto. I guess he is afraid of being laughed at. We are all the same, little brother, as we are all wanderers in this world, said Sun Quan. With the world people. Yes, these young masters in the capital have their nostrils almost growing to their eyes. They look down on us outsiders and think we are all from the countryside. It's really infuriating, don't you think? Sun Quan complained to others. It's not good to say bad things about people behind their backs. The little brother responded weakly. Alas, little brother, I think you are too weak, otherwise how could you be bullied? Sun Quan was quite disappointed. There are only two of us here and you don't even dare to complain. If you really face that group of people, you will naturally fall into a disadvantage and be unable to resist. Before Sun Quan finished speaking, the little brother next to him suddenly interrupted him with a shout. Who said I don't dare to resist? Perhaps Sun Quan had touched a sore spot and the little brother was a little agitated and his voice became much louder. Ahem. He quickly realized that he had lost his composure and immediately added in a low voice, what I mean is that since I showed up here today, it's to give some people a hard time. Don't think that I'm someone who can be bullied. Snap. 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 Sun Quan applauded. That's right, little brother, that's the way it should be. We are not inferior to them at all and we will teach them a lesson later. Hey, I saw you staring over there, did you see someone you know? The little brother's face turned black. Who would be his acquaintance? Sun Quan curled his lips. That's the enemy. So Sun Quan looked over with curiosity. Then Sun Quan was stunned. Hey, is this a foul? He is so white and clean, just like the young handsome men in later generations. Isn't he a little too handsome? I understand. Sun Quan nodded while staring at that side, gritting his teeth and smiling. He's so handsome any man would have a grudge against him. Little brother, just leave it to me, I'll help you get rid of him later. Sun Quan patted his chest and said this, but at this time he was just regarded as bragging. If only it were that simple. The little brother sighed slightly and returned to his inferiority complex. Sun Quan did not explain much. Believe it or not, the answer will be clear later. By the way, what's the name of your enemy? Sun Quan asked curiously. He was so handsome, so he should not be an unknown person. But the other party was the same as his side, one big and one small, a duo. They didn't look like any prominent figures in Kyoto. Could it be that he was also from the suburbs of Beijing? You wouldn't understand even if I told you, the little brother replied. How do you know I don't know if you don't tell me? Sun Quan seemed unconvinced. The little brother glanced at Sun Quan directly. Do you know me then? Sun Quan was quite shameless and asked directly with his hands clasped. I haven't asked for your name yet, little brother. Tang Yu. Sun Quan's eyes turned. He knew Tang Yu Xiaobao. As for Tang Yu, he was probably a nobody. That's right. With such a character, it would be strange for him to become famous in this era full of heroes. However, Sun Quan still raised his hand. It turns out to be brother Tang Yu. I have heard of you for a long time. Even though Tang Yu had a blank expression, he was still somewhat amused by Sun Quan. Then I have yet to ask for your name, little brother? Hey! Sun Quan clapped his hands. That's a good question. I'm not afraid that you might be scared if I tell you this. My name is Sun Quan. Since the other party was not the hateful Kyoto talent, there was naturally no need for Sun Quan to conceal his identity. However, Sun Quan's smile soon froze on his face because Tang Yu only replied with one word. Oh. No, that's not right. I'm Sun Quan, one of the 4 talented scholars. I'm not famous, but you should have heard of me since you came to this party. Could it be that Tang Yu has heard of me but this is his standard reaction? If that's the case, it's no wonder that Sun Quan is isolated and has no friends. Perhaps because he found Sun Quan's reaction a little unique. Tang Yu looked at him in surprise. Are you famous? In Tang Yu's eyes, Sun Quan was just a bragging immature kid. It seemed that he had never heard of Sun Quan's name before. No. I come from a small town. If I don't tell you this, you might not remember it. Sun Quan replied, and the smile on his face didn't look so bright for a moment. Opposite. Sun Quan's gaze just now probably attracted the other party's attention, so the other party also politely smiled back at Sun Quan, but unexpectedly Sun Quan had no reaction at all and directly started playing with the friends around him, completely ignoring their goodwill, which was quite embarrassing. Brother, although the academic atmosphere in the capital is flourishing, the moral atmosphere is worrying. The short man spoke up. He was about the same age as Sun Quan. I thought that after experiencing the Yellow Turban rebellion, the scholars in the capital would be less flashy and more serious. It's really disappointing to see it like this now. It's not that they haven't changed, but the old corrupt practices have become even worse. Although my master sent me to the capital for other reasons, I also hope to make a contribution to the Han Dynasty. The Yellow Turban rebellion is the greatest warning. It will be too late if we don't change. The tall man, Tang Yu's enemy, the incredibly handsome young man, said, if the leader does what the leader does, the followers will follow. If we start from the top, we will definitely be able to change this trend from the root. That's true, but this trip is by no means an easy one. Brother, please take care. The short man said in a deep voice. Don't worry, junior brother. I know what to do. The young man raised his head and looked towards Sun Quan again, his eyes falling on Tang Yu. On this side, Tang Yu also stared back at him. Finally. The stipulated time limit has arrived. The gate of Yuan Mansion is closed. Yuan Wei appears with a group of Yuan family members, and the highlight is here. I'm really waiting to die. Sun Quan narrowed his eyes and decisively used his first skill of the day. Let me think about it. An unknown amount of time passed in the illusion, but in reality only 1 second had passed. After coming out of the illusion, Sun Quan stood there closing his eyes and thinking, digesting the intelligence he had just obtained, including the test questions. Little brother, it's time for us to go over. Tang Yu reminded. Sun Quan opened his eyes again and looked at Tang Yu with a playful look. My little brother, you are really good at hiding things. Oh, let's go quickly. If we don't go now, there will be no room left. Sun Quan moved forward immediately. Hey! Tang Yu subconsciously wanted to hold Sun Quan back, but it was too late. He could only hurry up and said, little brother, wait a minute. You can't just sit anywhere. The two of them walked in front and behind and soon entered the front of the crowd, where there were 5 armchairs. Sun Quan directly chose a seat at the edge of the 5 and sat down while pulling Tang Yu and pointing to the side. Hurry! Little brother, sit here. It looks like if you don't sit down, your seat will be taken by someone else. The noisy scene suddenly became quiet and everyone's attention was focused on Sun Quan and the other man. Chapter 23. 5 of them are common sense. Sun Quan still looked careless, not taking it seriously at all, as if others were not looking at him. Tang Yu's face turned red as she was stared at. She didn't know whether to stand or sit. She stood aside at a loss. She wanted to pull Sun Quan up but was afraid of attracting too much attention. As for leaving directly, she couldn't move her feet. Fortunately, at this time someone came forward to help him resolve the embarrassment. Mr. Tang, please take a seat. The person who spoke was actually the person in charge today, Yuan Wei. Thank you, Master Yuan. Tang Yu hurriedly bowed and sat down, leaving only his back to the others, finally feeling relieved. Thinking of what he had experienced, Tang Yu glared at the culprit next to him but saw Sun Quan winking and laughing at him. Tang Yu didn't know whether to cry or laugh. After hesitating for a while, Tang Yu still leaned forward slightly and whispered to Sun Quan. Little brother, this is not the place for you to sit. Leave quickly before Master Yuan gets angry. It may still be in time. Sun Quan tilted his head. Why can't I sit here? Yuan Wei saw everything that the two were saying, but he said nothing. His eyes were always on Sun Quan and no one knew what he was thinking. Just when everyone thought that Yuan Wei was about to get angry and send people to drive Sun Quan out, Yuan Wei suddenly turned his eyes away and said to the three young men who stood out from the crowd one by one, "Please take a seat, Master Yang, Master Wang and Master Yuan." "Thank you, Master Yuan, for the seats." The three responded at the same time and sat down in the 5 seats in the front row. At this moment everyone understood. So these are the seats specially prepared for the 4 young geniuses. But why are there 5? Who is that Mr. Tang? And that other kid is probably going to be in trouble soon. Master Yuan didn't ask you to sit down, but you dared to sit down and even rushed to sit down. You really don't know how to live or die. Where did this uneducated guy come from? Seeing that he is with young Master Tang, is his last name also Tang? Tang family, could it be that Tang family? Sitting in the front seat, Sun Quan curled his lips and said, "TSK, what a bunch of ignorant guys. Don't you know that there are 5 of the 4 great talented scholars? Is this common sense?" Of course, although he said so, Sun Quan was still frightened at the beginning of the illusion and even thought that this little brother Tang Yu was playing dumb to deceive his innocent boy's feelings. But later Sun Quan saw the reason. Little brother Tang Yu was really not playing dumb. He didn't have the ability to be listed as one of the 4 talents. In other words, this little brother Tang Yu was a standard relative. Although the Yuan family also invited him and let him enter the finals directly, they did not release any news in advance just to avoid damaging their own brand. Of course, even though he was a relative, it didn't mean that Tang Yu was already the champion. Yuan Wei would never do something that would ruin his reputation. If he really wanted to choose Tang Yu, he would have chosen him directly. Why would he have made such a big fuss? Therefore, Tang Yu's appearance here was just a formality. His real purpose was not to be elected as the champion but to compete with someone. On the rostrum, Yuan Wei's eyes passed over Yang Xiuwan, Ruan Yu and Tang Yu one by one and finally returned to Sun Quan. He smiled and said, "I guess this must be Master Sun Quan, right?" Sun Quan? He is Sun Quan, one of the 4 talented young men. There was a commotion at the scene, especially Tang Yu, who was almost staring out of his head. He only had his opponent in mind and had never heard of the so-called 4 young talents before coming here. But even if he hadn't known about them, he would never have thought that Sun Quan would be one of the 4. You know, he had never heard of Sun Quan's name before, unlike Yang Xiuwan, Ruan Yu and other talented people who at least had heard of him. Sun Quan happily jumped down from the armchair and bowed to Yuan Wei. Sun Quan of Jiangdong meeting Master Yuan. Yuan Wei's eyes moved. It was not known whether it was intentional or unintentional. It was quite meaningful that Sun Quan deliberately emphasized his identity as a Jiangdong native. "Ha ha ha, I like energetic young people like you." Yuan Wei laughed, "But why are you sure that this is the position I prepared for you?" "Yes, if there were only 4 positions it would be fine, but now there are 5. Most people would not immediately think that this is for the 4 young talents." Yuan Wei believed that Tang Yu would not tell Sun Quan about him in advance. So did Sun Quan guess it randomly? Or did he see the clues from somewhere? Sun Quan did not give a direct answer to Yuan Wei's question but replied, "As a person, it is important to know one's own limitations. I know that my knowledge is not as good as the others, so I took the initiative to choose the last position. I hope that the brothers and seniors can consider my young age and be more tolerant of me." Yuan Kuei didn't mean to ask this question, but Sun Quan was answering Yuan Kuei's question. Sun Quan's art of speaking alone has made many smart people no longer underestimate him. However, there are still some people who think that Sun Quan was cowardly and afraid and gave up early. They hope that everyone can give him some leniency and not let him suffer a complete defeat and die in such a miserable way. It is important for a person to know himself. Well said. Please take a seat, Mr. Sunday. Yuan Wei did not continue to dig deeper into the previous question. Thank you, Master Yuan. After Sun Quan finished speaking, he took his seat and made a face at Tang Yu, who was still stunned. "You?" Tang Yu hesitated to speak and finally turned his head away and ignored Sun Quan. Tang Yu didn't think Sun Quan had deceived him. After all, Sun Quan had introduced himself before. It was just that Tang Yu was uninformed and had never heard of Sun Quan's name. Looking back now, Sun Quan's reaction at that time was not surprising. The reason why he ignored Sun Quan was firstly to calm his mind, and secondly it was ridiculous that Tang Yu was actually a little afraid of Sun Quan. Tang Yu believed that Sun Quan absolutely could not have known him beforehand. Even if someone had leaked the news, this kind of information was definitely not something Sun Quan could have obtained. In other words, Sun Quan actually judged that Tang Yu was the fifth person just by meeting him just now and exchanging a few simple words? Otherwise, Sun Quan knew clearly who sat here, so he could just sit down himself. How could he let Tang Yu sit down? Others may have thought that Tang Yu knew Sun Quan, so he told Sun Quan in advance that he was the fifth person. Only Tang Yu, who knew the truth, and Yuan Wei, who saw through the truth at the scene, truly understood how talented Sun Quan was. Putting aside his knowledge and talent for now, at least Sun Quan's other performances have already added a lot of points in Yuan Wei's heart. After laying such a good foundation, Sun Quan really began to implement his plan. Talented people in Kyoto, get ready to tremble. Let me, young Master Sun, teach you how to be a man. And brother Tang Yu next to him, I can only say Amitba in advance. As for the other dark horses, even if you are not from Kyoto, I'm sorry, young Master Sun wants to win the championship. Even if you are a dragon crossing the river, you can only lie down for the time being. Chapter 24, A Blockbuster. Soon numerous servants came forward and placed a simple wooden table in front of each young talent. Except for the first row of Sun Quan and the other 5 people who were sitting on the relatively exquisite wooden table, all the talents behind them could only stand behind the simple wooden table. Then pairs of maids appeared and placed pens, inkstones, paper and inkstones on each table. Needless to say, this was the test paper used to answer questions in the exam. Of course, the so-called test paper is actually just a blank piece of paper. Although paper making was already available in this era, printing was not. With so many candidates, did they have to write the test questions for them one by one in advance? Labor may not be valuable, but the test questions are confidential. How could they be known by so many people at will? Therefore, such assessments are usually oral test questions on the spot, and then the candidates write down the answers below. As for the content of the assessment, it varies from person to person. It may be poetry or songs, or it may be chimanduanja. Nowadays there is no imperial examination. All assessments are private and there is no template. Therefore, it is not important what you are tested on. What is important is to figure out the real thoughts of the test setter. What kind of talent does he need? In many cases, you do not need to answer all the questions correctly. You just need to be better than others in the end and more in line with the taste and interests of the test setter. Then you are likely to be chosen in the end. So what were Yuan Wei's personal preferences? As Yuan Wei was the current imperial tutor and a high-ranking official, many people judged that this should be a fairly orthodox national exam. Ahem, be quiet and prepare for the questions. Next to Yuan Wei, the examiner stood up and said. The scene suddenly became extremely quiet and every candidate could almost hear his or her own heartbeat. The examiner turned to ask Yuan Wei for instructions. Yuan Wei nodded to him and the exam began. Question 1. What is the 55th word in the Book of Songs, Dongshan? Ah. Most people at the scene were a little confused. It is common to take dictation tests. Even if you are asked to dictate the entire text of the Book of Songs, Dongshan, it is not difficult. But asking only the 55th word is a bit strange. However, it is strange. Since the entire text can be dictated, is it difficult to ask only one word? Of course, it was not difficult or only slightly difficult because it was easy to make mistakes, but Sun Quan still admired the person who set the question. The unique imagination was one thing, but more importantly, Sun Quan knew that there was a follow-up to this question. To be precise, this was not just one question but a whole set of questions. According to the development in Sansi's illusion, after 10 seconds the examiner would ask the second question, and after more than 10 seconds he would ask the third question. It can be said that he did not give people time to think carefully. Obviously, this not only tests whether you have memorized the book but also tests your reaction speed. If you have not memorized the book, or if you memorize it slowly, you will definitely not be able to keep up with the pace. It is no exaggeration to say that under normal development this first question can clear half of the questions. However, if your mentality is not up to standard and you are too entangled in the questions you did not answer before, you will miss many questions which will eventually lead to a mental breakdown and no results. It can be said that this first question is full of traps. Just as the candidates were surprised, thinking, reciting quietly or counting with their eyes closed, Sun Quan, who was sitting in the front row, suddenly raised his hand, stood up and shouted, "I know. It's the word no. This." The examiner's face changed. Sun Quan answered correctly. Of course, this was not the point. The point was that he said the answer directly. This simply destroyed the examination discipline and disrupted the examiner's plan to continue asking questions. Now, if others wrote down the answers according to what Sun Quan said, what would that count as? At this moment, the most reasonable approach would be to invalidate this question and then give Sun Quan a warning, or simply kick him out and let the remaining candidates continue the exam. But Sun Quan was not an ordinary person. He was one of the 4 young talents, and he was invited by Yuan Wei himself, so the examiner did not dare to make a decision casually. So the examiner turned around and sought Yuan Wei's opinion. Yuan Wei held out his hand and asked the examiner to pause. He did not blame Sun Quan, but instead asked Sun Quan curiously, "Mr. Sun, how did you come up with the answer in such a short time?" Yes, before Sun Quan gave the answer, no one picked up a pen. Normal people hadn't even memorized the 55th word. Many people even thought that Sun Quan was just guessing and were ready to laugh at him. Sun Quan answered slowly. In the Book of Songs Dongshan, each sentence has 4 characters, so by the end of the 14th sentence there are exactly 56 characters. The 14th sentence is so the 55th character is dot. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. It is not surprising that Sun Quan was familiar with the Book of Songs, but it is very surprising that he was also proficient in mathematics. You should know that mathematics has always been a very difficult subject. Most ancient people had never learned mathematics, but whether they had learned it or not, they never thought it was something that a child could learn. Therefore, what Sun Quan showed now was somewhat shocking. Being able to calculate 14 sentences with 56 words in a single thought, this was not to say that he was proficient, but at least he was very good at it. Hee, that's awesome. Sun Quan enjoyed the attention of others and looked very proud. The above statements are all lies. Sun Quan already knew the answer in the Sansi illusion, otherwise how could he answer so quickly? Nonsense for Sun Quan. 4 times 14 equals 56, which is not difficult, but how could Sun Quan instantly think of the 14th sentence as? Therefore everything was deliberately said by Sun Quan to deceive people in order to make a splash. 2 words, pretending to be cool. However, Sun Quan did not expect that these ancients were worse at mathematics than he thought, so his success was even more shocking than he had imagined. Admire. Yuan Wei couldn't help but praise him. Not far from the examination room, 2 middle-aged men in fancy clothes stood together and watched. One of them, who looked quite handsome, suddenly spoke up. This Sun Zhengmo, although he is young, he is not a simple person at all. Oh? The other person, whose facial features were not as square as the former, looked a little sinister. These 2 are the backbone of this generation of the Yuan family, the brothers Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu. Yuan Shao was promoted to the position of Silly Xiaowei, while Yuan Shu was the general of the Tiger Guards. Both of them were powerful figures with military power. However, although Yuan Shao was the elder brother, he was born out of wedlock. Now he holds a higher position, so Yuan Shu, who was born out of wedlock, is a little jealous of Yuan Shao. The 2 brothers are harmonious in public, but they compete in secret. Who will be the next head of the Yuan family? I think Sun Quan is too young and likes to show off. Little does he know that a tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. If it were someone else, he would have been kicked out long ago. Yuan Shu commented, and it was unclear whether he was deliberately saying the opposite of Yuan Shao or was hinting at Yuan Shao's standing out in the forest. No, Yuan Shao shook his head. It is precisely because he knows that he is young that Sun Quan deliberately did this, because he knows that his uncle will not blame a child as young as him. If he does not rely on this method to gain a reputation, he may not have any chance at all. So what? It's just a question. Yuan Shu disagreed. It's not just one question anymore. Keep reading. Yuan Shao said he has changed the entire test. Chapter 25 Dark Horse. Yuan Shao had a very accurate view. Although he could never guess Sun Quan's true intention to crush the heroes, he had vaguely guessed Sun Quan's purpose and means. That's right, Sun Quan wanted to completely change the way of answering questions in the entire test to gain the unique and greatest advantage that only people of his age can have. Imagine if the assessment went on as normal according to the original method, then no matter how good Sun Quan was, even if he answered all the questions judging by the knowledge of the Kyoto scholars, there would be at least a few who could be at the same level as him. In other words, Sun Quan would definitely not be the only one who could get 100 points or the highest score. But Sun Quan spoke out the answer before everyone else. That was different. Even if others had already thought of the correct answer, would you still have the nerve to pick up your pen after Sun Quan spoke out the answer? Then run to answer first like Sun Quan did? This is indeed a plan, but Sun Quan answered first because he was young, and you, an adult, would not feel ashamed to run to answer first? In this era, especially for literati, face is very important. To take a step back even if you also rush to answer first because of your age, unless you are obviously faster than Sun Quan. Otherwise, even if you speak at the same time as Sun Quan, in the eyes of others you are already inferior to Sun Quan because you are a few years older. By then, if you go to compete with a child, you will not be as good as him in knowledge and even in character. This makes most talented people who cherish their feathers dare not speak rashly before they have absolute confidence. In this way, Sun Quan instantly gained the greatest advantage. As for his peers who could compare with Sun Quan? That's why Yuan Shao said that Sun Quan was not simple. Of course, at present everything is just Yuan Shao's speculation. It is also possible that he thinks too much and Sun Quan is not as smart as he thinks. But Yuan Shao has always believed that there is no false reputation under a great reputation. Since Sun Quan has such a great reputation in Jiangdong, it is definitely not groundless. Instead of looking down on others, it is better to look up to others. This is Yuan Shao's advantage. Of course, it may also be his disadvantage in the future. You must know that it is difficult to live up to the reputation. You will find out the truth if you keep reading. There. After praising Sun Quan, Yuan Wei did not give much comment and asked the examiner to continue asking questions. The examiner gestured in the direction of Sun Quan, meaning what should he do if Sun Quan gave the answer again? Yuan Wei smiled slightly. No problem. With Yuan Wei's approval, the examiner knew what to do next. Ahem, please pay attention. Question 2. The examiner reminded them, and the scene instantly returned to solemnity. Some people hesitated for a while, but in the end no one had the nerve to write down the answer. In other words, only Sun Quan answered the first question, and Sun Quan was one step ahead of everyone else. The test started again, but unlike the beginning, everyone felt a thorn in their hearts now because neither Yuan Wei nor the examiner condemned Sun Quan's behavior just now. So what if Sun Quan spoke up again to answer the question? Oh no, not if. Seeing Sun Quan's excited look, he will definitely answer again. Just when everyone was hesitating, the second question came. What is the fourth to last line of the Chusi's Li Sa? As soon as the people below heard the question, they started cursing before they had time to think about it. It was obvious that it was Sun Quan who stood up again. If Sun Quan had considered the first question for a second or two, then this time he didn't waste even a second. But even so, Sun Quan's eyelids twitched when he stood up. My servant is sad about my horse's sadness. He curls up and looks back but cannot move. Sun Quan gave the answer as usual. In his peripheral vision, another person had also finished writing, and he was no earlier than Sun Quan. This person was not one of the 4 talented people in the front, but one of the people in the back row. What a talent! Sun Quan thought secretly. This is only the second question, and he not only figured out a way to deal with it but also managed to do it so quickly. He is definitely Sun Quan's biggest enemy. It turns out that this person was named a dark horse by Sun Quan in the Sansi illusion, and he was the biggest dark horse. In the end, he even suppressed the other 4 talents. Sun Quan thought his plan would go smoothly, but he didn't expect that Cheng Yaojin would come out halfway. Are you planning to be a dark horse to the end? On stage. The answer is correct. The examiner first gave Sun Quan the thumbs up. Then he said to the only person in the back row who had written down the answer. Excuse me, who is this gentleman? I am Qin Chuan. Next to Sun Quan, brother Tang Yu's face changed and he turned around suddenly. That's right, the biggest dark horse's brother Tang Yu's enemy, the handsome young man who was ridiculed by Sun Quan, is the public enemy of men. When thinking about the illusion, Sun Quan couldn't help but wonder, not only is he handsome but he is also so talented, how could such a person not be famous in history? After all, Sun Quan thought about it and couldn't remember Qin Chuan in the Three Kingdoms. Did he die young? Or did he not appear in the history books for other reasons? Or maybe Qin Chuan was not his real name? Unfortunately, without any other clues, Sun Quan couldn't figure out the reason at all. "Mr. Qin, may I see your answer?" asked the examiner. Qin Chuan lifted up the paper on the table and showed it to people. It said, "The servant is sad about my horse. He curls up and looks back but cannot move." Bang bang bang. Yuan Wei led the applause. Even though he wrote in a hurry, his handwriting is still so neat. Master Qin's calligraphy skills are really good. "Your Excellency Taifu, you are too kind." Qin Chuan responded with a bow, which was absolutely a humble word. "Who is this person? Why haven't I seen it before? Is he from out of town too?" People around started to talk in low voices. Qin Chuan was so handsome, if they were from Kyoto there was no way they didn't know him. In the front row, Wang Can and Ruan Yu looked at each other and finally calmed down. If they were caught off guard by Sun Quan in the first question, they were able to keep up with the pace in the second question. However, Wang Can and Ruan Yu could not think of Qin Chuan's method. They were still struggling with whether to answer the question in a rush with Sun Quan. In the end, they did not speak out because of their status. After all, Sun Quan was too fast, and no matter how fast they were, they could only be as fast as Sun Quan. Now Qin Chuan showed people another way. One uses writing, the other uses speaking, which offsets Sun Quan's age advantage. As long as they can keep up with Sun Quan's speed, they don't have to worry about being left behind by Sun Quan. Once Sun Quan makes a mistake, they will chase him closely, forcing Sun Quan in front to continue making mistakes because of nervousness until he is surpassed. The teacher is right. There are always people better than you. Ruan Yu sighed. "It's never too late to mend," said Wang Can. Seeing this, Sun Quan was helpless. He originally wanted to make the final decision, but now it seems that he can only find a way to widen the gap in the second category of questions. Sure enough, in the following questions, Qin Chuan, Yang Xiu, Wang Can, Ruan Yu and many others responded very quickly and successfully wrote the correct answers under the pressure of Sun Quan. The competition began to become tense. "Over here. How did you know it would turn out like this?" Yuan Shu was a little surprised. "It's not that I knew it would turn out like this, but Sun Quan's goal was to turn things into this." Yuan Shao replied, because he had already seen through the core of this selection. Chapter 26, Yuan Shao. "What do you mean?" Yuan Shu asked humbly. Yuan Shu was jealous of Yuan Shao, but that didn't mean he looked down on Yuan Shao. On the contrary, it was because he felt that Yuan Shao was better than himself that Yuan Shu was jealous. Children of noble families, especially those from a family like the Yuan family, would not raise useless people. The competition between Yuan Shu and Yuan Shao, at least for now, was still a healthy competition. Yuan Shu did not use any conspiracy to plot against Yuan Shao, but secretly learned Yuan Shao's advantages in the hope of surpassing Yuan Shao. "What is the purpose of this assessment?" Yuan Shao asked back. "Of course I will. It's my uncle who wants to choose a direct disciple." Yuan Shu answered, almost letting the cat out of the bag, because as far as he knew, it was not as simple as choosing a direct disciple. What Yuan Shu really wanted to choose this time was the emperor's tutor. The idea of a direct disciple was just to cover up the truth. "That's right." Yuan Shao looked at Yuan Shu with a half smile. If Yuan Shu knew, how could he not know? Yuan Shao did not say it directly and continued, "This time uncle is choosing a direct disciple and only one. In this case, why do we have to classify these young talents into different levels? Isn't it better to directly divide them into one and others?" Yuan Shu's eyes flashed. "I see. According to the original test, the final result will definitely be arranged in a pyramid shape and Yuan Kuei will make a choice from the top. But in fact, there may not be only one person who can stand at the top in the end. After all, the number of questions is limited. How can it be possible to cover all aspects in a short period of time? This will increase the difficulty of Yuan Kuei's selection. Moreover, what Yuan Kuei wants to choose is definitely not just as simple as knowledge. He also has other considerations, and these qualities may not necessarily be shown in normal answering. For example, Qin Xuan's quick wit just now. In terms of knowledge, he is actually not better than Yang Xiu Wang Can and others, but he was the first to come up with a solution. So even though the scores of several people may not be very different now in Yuan Wei's heart, apart from Sun Quan, the one he is most optimistic about is Qin Xuan. Sun Quan's disorder was an accident, but since this accident could help Yuan Kuei make a better choice, Yuan Kuei would naturally abandon his original plan. It was because he saw through this that in the first question Yuan Shao determined that his uncle Yuan Kuei would not blame Sun Quan but would acquiesce that Sun Quan would continue to make trouble. He wanted to see how many of these talents were real talents. Pyramid? Average score? Ranking? Pass rate? Please, is this what Yuan Wei wants? No matter how many people get 0 points or fail, in the end Yuan Wei doesn't care. These mediocre people are not in his eyes. Yuan Wei just needs a clear winner. Even so, Sun Quan is a bit too risky. What if my uncle doesn't like his frivolous character? Even if he gets the highest score, he may not be chosen. Yuan Shu couldn't help but say. Wrong. Yuan Shao shook his head again. Sun Quan is not only not taking risks, on the contrary, he is playing to his advantage. What does that mean? Yuan Shu was puzzled. He never thought that his uncle Yuan Wei had any special preference for this kind of young and frivolous boy. Besides, the person chosen this time was a tutor. You can't act so arrogant in front of the emperor, right? If uncle really wants to choose a normal disciple, then he can gather a few famous talents and hold a small test in private. Yang Xiu and others have been tested by time in terms of knowledge and character. At least they are much more reliable than other unknown talents. Why bother to make such a big fuss? Yuan Shao whispered, so I guess uncle doesn't want to choose one of Yang Xiu Wan Can and Wan Yu. Since you don't want to vote, why bother sending out a special invitation? Yuan Shu couldn't help but say. The face of our Yuan family is one thing, but the other thing is the key point. Yuan Shao approached Yuan Shu. Think about it, since Yang Xiu Wan Can and Wan Yu are all among them, why do other talents dare to come? Do they rely on their own knowledge and talents? No, they rely on competitiveness. It's confidence. Even if it's just a little bit, if they don't have the ambition to overpower these great talents, how could these people appear here? Look at those people. Do they look disappointed when they fail to answer a question? Disappointed. Why are they disappointed? Because they also had fantasies at the beginning that they would be chosen in the end. This is the most important information hidden behind the assessment. In the selection of disciples this time, the qualities that uncle values most are the desire to succeed and self-confidence. In comparison, knowledge ranks second. You mean Sun Quan has seen through this as well? Yuan Shu said in shock. You know, even Yuan Shu couldn't see this kind of information, and Sun Quan was still just a child. Sun Quan, no, you guys think too much, you really think too much. I just decided on the spur of the moment to crush them. It is also possible that a wise general of the Sun family saw through it. But no matter what, everything that happened just now was definitely Sun Quan's improvisation. Even if others knew it in advance, they could not do it like Sun Quan. Yuan Shao gave Sun Quan a very high evaluation. Yuan Shu looked at the small figure in the field and murmured. This Sun Zhengmo is really not a simple person. Yuan Shao nodded. Sun Jian gave birth to a good son. If nothing unexpected happened, my uncle would definitely choose Sun Quan this time, but now with Qin Xuan I don't know the result. Yuan Shu's eyes never left Sun Quan. It was unknown what he was thinking. As if he had suddenly made up his mind, he spoke to Yuan Shao. No matter what the result is, I have my eyes on this Sun Zhengmo. You won't snatch it from me, right? Yuan Shao's face froze, and after a moment's hesitation he said. Now that you've spoken. Seeing this, Yuan Shu was overjoyed. Ben Shu, I will do you a favor this time, huh? No, once the result comes out, the Sun family might be squeezed out. I will go to Sun Jian now to arrange a marriage. With that, Yuan Shu left quickly. Sun Quan didn't know that his joke marriage would soon come true. After Yuan Shu left, Yuan Shao smiled coldly. His previous entanglement was deliberately shown to Yuan Shu. Yuan Shu thought that Yuan Shao didn't know that the one he was selecting this time was a tutor? So he thought Yuan Shao let go of a future star? Please, Yuan Shu didn't think about it. If this tutor was really a good job, would Yuan Wei choose someone from outside? There are so many talented children in his Yuan family. Are they just for fun? Although he didn't know Yuan Kuei's true intention, Yuan Shao believed that being a tutor would be very risky. Since Yuan Shu wanted to take on this hot potato, let him take it. If he got burned in the end, it would not be Yuan Benchu's fault. In the examination room, all the questions in the first category were asked out very quickly. Sun Quan naturally did not miss a single question and answered all of them correctly. Unexpectedly, the other people also answered all of them except for the first two questions. Qin Chuan only missed one question, and did not miss any of the remaining questions. This made Sun Quan admire these ancient people from the bottom of his heart. If it were a normal competition, he would definitely not be able to beat them. While Sun Quan admired others, others admired Sun Quan even more. Rather than admiring Sun Quan's memory and reaction, it is better to say that they admire Sun Quan's mentality. As the leader and the most watched person, Sun Quan is under the greatest pressure. Others who think they are standing in Sun Quan's position will inevitably be nervous and prone to making mistakes. But I didn't expect that Sun Quan, a child under 10 years old, persisted. Is he born with a big heart and can't feel the sense of urgency? Chapter 27 Additional Rules. Between the first and second categories of questions, Yuan Wei gave everyone a break. Everyone drank water and went to the toilet to relax and relieve their nerves. Moreover, although Sun Quan did not write a single word, the other students had almost filled up their papers, so they also took this opportunity to change. In layman's terms, after taking one exam, the papers were collected. Hey little brother, ahem, Mr. Sun, are you okay? Can you hold on? Brother Tang Yu whispered with concern beside him. Sun Quan glanced at Tang Yu speechlessly, and then he wanted to say, "Are you okay, little brother?" So far Tang Yu has not answered a single question. Of course, Tang Yu is not the only one who has not answered a question. But you, Tang Yu, are sitting in the first row, and everyone here either got full marks or 98 marks. Don't you feel embarrassed and ashamed for handing in a blank paper? Well, Sun Quan also knows that you, Tang Yu, didn't come here for the test, so getting 0 points is no big deal. But your target, your opponent, the guy you're competing with now, got a full 99 points and ranked second. Where did you get the confidence to compete with him? Could it be that you two are fighting over a woman and you don't have any intersection in other aspects, so you didn't know the details before you came? Sun Quan's guess was correct. Tang Yu was indeed embarrassed. Although he regarded Qin Chuan as an enemy and a rival, he actually didn't know much about Qin Chuan. If Tang Yu had known that Qin Chuan was so knowledgeable, how could he have come to humiliate himself? But even though it was embarrassing, Tang Yu had recovered after such a long time. So Tang Yu changed his mind and changed his mind. It was impossible for him, Tang Yu, to defeat Qin Chuan, but Tang Yu couldn't just watch Qin Chuan easily defeat others and even win the championship, right? At present, the one who had the best chance of stopping Qin Chuan was Sun Quan. That's why Tang Yu was so concerned about Sun Quan. Can he hold on? Is he okay? If even Sun Quan couldn't do it, who else could he count on? But Sun Quan was too young, so Tang Yu couldn't help but worry. Did Sun Quan read enough books? Did he have enough knowledge? If he continued to take the exam, would he be able to do it? Little brother, can't you have a little confidence in me? Sun Quan said unhappily. Look at the others. I guess they are all waiting for me to make a mistake. If even you don't believe in me, then no one will stand on my side. I believe in you. I absolutely believe in you. Tang Yu hurriedly encouraged Sun Quan. No matter what, Sun Quan himself could not lose confidence. If you can win this time, no matter what reward you want, I mean, if you have any difficulties in the future, you can come to me. Sun Quan's eyes curved. You said this yourself, little brother. I never know what politeness is. Although Tang Yu's identity is still unknown, he must be someone extraordinary to have Yuan Wei open a backdoor for him. Sun Quan suspected that Tang Yu was similar to Qin Chuan and that they did not use their real names. Unfortunately, Sun Quan's Sansi illusion only lasted for 1 hour and he could not learn more. I keep my word. Brother Tang Yu said affirmatively. Then I have to think carefully about what request I should make. Sun Quan touched his chin and looked as if he was thinking seriously. Tang Yu looked at Sun Quan and felt both amused and angry. Are you so confident that you can win? You should have seen without me telling you that Qin Chuan is not someone you can mess with. Sun Quan smiled and asked. Why do you think Qin Chuan is not easy to mess with? Without waiting for Tang Yu to answer, Sun Quan gave the answer directly. Because he just missed one question? Tang Yu nodded. Wouldn't it be even harder to deal with me if I didn't miss that question? Why should I be afraid of him? Sun Quan asked back. You? Tang Yu didn't know what to say anyway. You have to be extremely careful later. I'm not trying to put pressure on you. The questions later will probably be different from the first ones and will be more off topic. Oh? Sun Quan looked at Tang Yu meaningfully. Tang Yu knew what Sun Quan was thinking. He rolled his eyes and raised the blank paper on his desk. Don't guess randomly. If I knew the test questions in advance, I wouldn't be like this. Regardless of whether Tang Yu knew some inside information or not, Sun Quan already knew what the next test would be without his reminder. The first category, all the questions were from books that everyone could recite, such as the 4 books and the 5 classics, and tested proficiency and reaction speed. The second category of questions was very complicated, ranging from astronomy to geography, including music, chess, calligraphy and painting, as well as mathematics, medicine, engineering, etc., which could be said to be a test of knowledge. It can be said that in the first category it is normal for someone to get all the answers right, but in the second category, at least in this era, it is theoretically impossible for someone to get all the answers right, even if there is, it is not in this age group. Of course, Sun Quan is an exception. This is why he is confident that he can open up a gap in this round. The break was not long. Soon everyone returned to their seats and the second round of the assessment began. Ahem, silence. Just as the examiner was about to ask a question, Yuan Wei suddenly called him over and whispered something in his ear. Sun Quan's eyes moved. He didn't say anything during the break, but he said it at this time. It seemed that Yuan Wei was showing it to them. Of course, this was not the focus of Sun Quan's attention. What Sun Quan really cared about was that Yuan Wei had never done anything similar in the Sansi illusion just now. In other words, this was the butterfly effect caused by Sun Quan. Yuan Wei's current order was probably aimed at him. Sun Quan hesitated for a moment and did not immediately use the "let me think twice" skill for the second time. Since the skill had a limited number of uses, it had to be used with caution. No matter what Yuan Wei wanted to do, as long as the original question did not change, Sun Quan would be invincible. As expected. I only heard the examiner say before asking the question. In this round, please answer the questions carefully. For the questions I'm going to ask next, if you answer correctly, you will get extra points. If you answer incorrectly, you will lose extra points. The people below were slightly stunned, and then they understood that this rule was aimed at Sun Quan. The so-called knowing what you know and not knowing what you don't know, you can say they are rigid or they are serious. In this era, there is no such trend of no matter what you must write something, and you must not hand in a blank paper. As long as you don't know, you will never write, and naturally there will be no so-called wrong answer deduction. So in what cases will the answer be wrong? Connecting everything that just happened, it is easy to draw a conclusion. In the rush to answer, in panic, when you have been forced to be the first to answer, only in these cases will you answer wrong. In this case, who else could it be if not Sun Quan? What does Yuan Wei's sudden establishment of such a rule represent? Tang Yu looked at Sun Quan with great concern. This rule added by Yuan Wei had a great impact on Sun Quan. First, Yuan Wei deliberately gave the order in public to let people know that this was his decision, not the original rule. In other words, Yuan Wei showed an attitude and he wanted to suppress Sun Quan. Second, the rule of deducting points has no restrictions on other people who don't rush to answer questions, but for Sun Quan it is a double risk. Originally, if Sun Quan got one question wrong, he would be tied for first place at worst, but now if Sun Quan got one question wrong, he might be surpassed directly. Next, the pressure Sun Quan will have to bear will be at least twice that of the previous round. Chapter 28, Yuan Wei's calculation. There. Yuan Shao, who was watching from the sidelines, smiled slightly. It seems that uncle can't wait. This question may directly determine the result of today. Whether Sun Quan can succeed, whether he is a real genius, and whether he deserves to be chosen by uncle, we will soon know the answer. Just now Yuan Shao had already made an accurate judgment on the nature of this assessment. Compared with knowledge, Yuan Kuei valued quality more. What quality? Confidence and the quality of being competitive. Therefore Yuan Kuei deliberately added such a rule in front of everyone, or more precisely in front of Sun Quan. He did not really want to restrict Sun Quan's performance, but to further test and investigate Sun Quan. It can be said that in Yuan Kuei's mind, although the others have not been completely eliminated, they are still in the initial round of selection, while Sun Quan has entered the re-examination and he is even facing the final assessment. In the first round, Sun Quan has proved that even when facing the famous talents in Kyoto such as Yang Xiuwan, Can Wanyu, etc., Sun Quan is not timid at all. Not only does he take the initiative to compete with others, but he also has the strength to compete with others. Sun Quan is not facing a certain talent, he has withstood the pressure from everyone. Such a Sun Quan can be said to be quite in line with Yuan Kuei's appetite, so what is the point of continuing the second round of assessment according to the first round model? In the end, either Sun Quan continued to lead or he was suppressed. However, Sun Quan's suppression only proved that he was not as good as others in terms of knowledge, but his quality could not be denied. Since Yuan Kuei valued quality this time, wasn't this going in the wrong direction? After all, the Yuan family was a celebrity. Since Yuan Kuei held such a selection meeting, he had to act according to certain rules. After the second round, if Sun Quan is still in the lead, that would be the best. But if after the second round Sun Quan is completely surpassed by others and Yuan Wei still chooses Sun Quan no matter what your reasons are, can you convince the public? You have gathered so many talented people, are you sure you are not teasing them? Especially those who are ahead of Sun Quan will definitely be dissatisfied. There is no need for the Yuan family to dig their own graves and bear such public pressure. Therefore, since Yuan Kuei already had a goal in mind, he might as well be decisive and decide the result directly while Sun Quan still had an absolute lead. In this way, even if someone was dissatisfied, they would not be able to say anything. Of course, this was just the end of the first round, and even if Yuan Kuei was optimistic about Sun Quan, he could not make a decision so quickly, so there was this test. If Sun Quan got scared, got cowardly, and became cautious, then the assessment would continue as planned and there would be a third and fourth round. If Sun Quan withstood the pressure and was not frightened by Yuan Wei's attitude or the rule of deducting points, it would prove that Sun Quan was more competitive and confident than imagined. Who else would Yuan Wei choose if not him? Yuan Shao's analysis was correct, but his thinking was not comprehensive enough. Yuan Wei's move was not only to further test Sun Quan, he also considered other aspects. First of all, in the first question, Yuan Kuei did not deny Sun Quan's answering behavior, which may not be a big deal at the time, but after the first round many people got 0 points for this. While they were jealous of Sun Quan, they must have resentment towards Yuan Kuei. Therefore, at the beginning of the second round, Yuan Kuei deliberately suppressed Sun Quan in public, not only to put pressure on Sun Quan but also to eliminate the resentment of others towards him. These talented people will be the backbone of each family in the future. If the Yuan family wants to prosper, as always, it can't do without the support of other families. Secondly, although Yuan Wei, like most people, believed that Sun Quan's lead might not last until the second round, he would not easily make a judgment. Beforehand, all possibilities must be considered comprehensively. What if Sun Quan is really that talented and keeps leading or even widens the advantage? At that time, where would these talented people in the capital put their faces? This may be a legend for Sun Quan, but for others, for the entire young generation in the capital, it would be the biggest joke. As a person in a higher position, Yuan Kuei would not allow such an incident that could affect the style of study of a generation of people in Kyoto to happen, no matter what his considerations were. Therefore, choosing Sun Quan before the winner was clearly determined could completely prevent accidents. Don't forget that Sun Quan has another unmatched advantage, that is, he is young. Being young means greater plasticity. Yuan Kuei chooses his own disciples who are smart and more inclined to age, so no one will question his decision. Others will only think that they have lost because of their age, or they don't think they have lost at all. After all, they haven't taken the final exam yet. In this way, it will neither undermine the confidence of the talented people nor affect their relationship with each other. Everyone will live in harmony, which is the doctrine of the mean. All in all, this development is a good thing for Sun Quan. After all, it greatly increases his chances of winning and he no longer has to bear the risk of being overtaken by others. But at the same time, it is also a bad thing for Sun Quan because Yuan Wei has already considered the worst outcome in advance, and Sun Quan can no longer completely suppress this group of Kyoto talents to vent his anger. In the second round of assessment, the examiner will set the questions. There are several articles discussing maps. It is difficult to find all the names of the momentum. May I ask where this sentence of mine comes from? Some people's eyes lit up while others were puzzled. Obviously, this was not a passage from a regular book. In the first row, Wang Can and Ruan Yu looked at each other. They knew the answer to this question, but that was not the point. The point was that through this question they had roughly guessed the direction of this round of assessment. This was an opportunity to widen the gap with others in one fell swoop. As a result, before Wang Can and Ruan Yu had time to be happy, they saw from the corner of their eyes that Sun Quan stood up again. Damn it! If in the first round it was just ordinary talented people cursing, then at this moment even Wang Can and Ruan Yu couldn't help but swear. Is this Sun Quan really ignorant of life and death? Didn't you see the attitude that Yuan Wei just expressed? Don't you have any emotional intelligence at all? Even if you really know the answer to this question, you can't show it anymore. That's right, it was because everyone subconsciously thought that Sun Quan didn't dare to answer the question anymore and could only answer the question honestly like them, so no one immediately picked up the pen to answer the question and everyone was thinking seriously. So when Sun Quan stood up, it was too late for everyone to pick up the pen. I know. This is from the third chapter of The Art of Chess, the chapter on the use of momentum. As if to prove that he was not guessing, Sun Quan added the next sentences: the momentum of life and death, the ability of remaining strength. Whether it is a robbery or a hold, it is a free move. Hey! Wang Can and Ruan Yu sighed and put down the pens they had just picked up. Knowing that Sun Quan had already answered correctly, they naturally didn't have the face to write the same answer again. At this moment even they couldn't help but admire in their hearts that this Sun Quan was really not an ordinary person. Not only was his knowledge not inferior to theirs, but his courage was also extraordinary. After Sun Quan answered the question, he turned around and glared at Qin Xuan. He was not deliberately provoking Qin Xuan, but Qin Xuan was the only one at the scene who picked up the pen at the first moment. In other words, Qin Xuan had actually calculated in advance that Sun Quan would still answer this question. Unfortunately, Sun Quan grinned and looked at the empty white paper under Qin Xuan's pen. So what if you have calculated it? So what if you react quickly? If you don't know the answer, you still can't write it down. Facing Sun Quan's pointed gaze, Qin Xuan smiled slightly, put the pen away very casually, and at the same time he gently bowed to Sun Quan. Qin Xuan admires me. Sun Quan was not modest either, he saluted and replied. Polite. Chapter 29 ends early. After a hypocritical greeting with Qin Xuan, Sun Quan turned around thinking about something else. Something was wrong. Strange, very strange. In the previous Sansi illusion, because it was a normal assessment, Sun Quan didn't know which questions others answered and which ones they didn't. But since Qin Xuan was identified by Sun Quan as the biggest dark horse, it must be because he got a very good score in the end. But now, although this question is not mainstream, chess is not too biased among the miscellaneous subjects. There are not many people who can play the zither chess calligraphy and painting, but almost everyone in this era has dabbled in chess and calligraphy. Although there are few people who are proficient, there are not many people. To be precise, there are not many young people who have the energy to study it. But according to Sun Quan's speculation, there should be at least 10 people who can answer this question. Qin Xuan is not among them? If he couldn't even answer the chess questions, what about the more unpopular ones? Could it be that Qin Xuan was a genius who knew more about the less popular ones and didn't care about the popular ones at all? But that shouldn't be the case. Wang Can and Ruan Yu were disciples of Cai Yong, who was a famous all-rounder in the contemporary era. He was a writer and calligrapher and was also proficient in classics, history, astronomy, music, etc. Therefore, this second category was definitely the home court of Wang Can and Ruan Yu. But according to the results in Sun Quan's Sansi illusion, Qin Chuan's results should still be higher than Wang Can and Ruan Yu in the end. It's impossible that he could catch up in the end after being left behind in the second round, right? The doubts had to be suppressed temporarily and Sun Quan had to concentrate on dealing with the next questions. But what was unexpected was that on the podium Yuan Wei once again stopped the examiner from asking questions. It is rare to have such a grand gathering today, gathering so many young talents. You can all freely communicate, recite poems, and compose essays. My Yuan family will serve delicious food and fine wine to promote literary style. As soon as Yuan Wei opened his mouth, everyone's face changed drastically. Everyone was smart, so they understood what Yuan Wei meant. Obviously, the assessment was over and it was time for leisure and entertainment. The end of the assessment meant that Yuan Wei had already selected his personal disciple, so there was no need to continue the test. Based on everyone's performance, the only one who could be selected was Sun Quan. What? Impossible. Why is this happening? This isn't the end yet. Yeah, it's a little too early. There was a sudden uproar from the audience. Although everyone was whispering, the large number of people made the scene noisy. Seeing this, Yuan Wei said nothing more. He gave an order to the examiner and led his people away. After hearing what Yuan Wei said, the examiner looked quite surprised but still nodded in agreement. Not far away, Yuan Shao smiled slightly. Everything was within his expectations. He liked the feeling of being in control. Just as he was about to leave, he heard the examiner's voice. Mr. Sun Quan, Mr. Qin Chuan, please follow me. What? Yuan Shao paused. Qin Chuan was also on the list? Yuan Shao was not surprised. After all, in his opinion, Qin Chuan had some achievements, but his talent was not as good as Yang Xiu and others, and his character, confidence, was not as good as Sun Quan. He was neither good nor bad. At least based on his current performance, he should not have been selected. Why? Yuan Shao frowned slightly. If he had to say that Qin Chuan had something better than Sun Quan, it would probably be his appearance. What on earth is Uncle thinking? Unlike Yuan Shao, the talented people on this side were not surprised by Qin Chuan's election. If there was anyone else who could be selected besides Sun Quan according to his performance just now, it would only be Qin Chuan. Compared with Sun Quan, the others obviously preferred Qin Chuan to win. Although both of them were outsiders, firstly, Sun Quan was too young and no one wanted to be compared to a child. Secondly, Sun Quan was too arrogant, and except for Tang Yi, no other talented person would like him. Then, Mr. Qin. Mr. Qin, where are you from? Who is your teacher? Mr. Qin, I really admire you just now. Mr. Qin, we are optimistic about you. For a time, many people took the initiative to make friends with Qin Chuan. Regardless of whether Qin Chuan could defeat Sun Quan in the end, in their opinion, the polite Qin Chuan was much more worthy of association than Sun Quan. In comparison, Sun Quan's side was almost deserted. Young Master Sun Quan, little brother Sun Quan. Tang Yu patted Sun Quan on the side, pulling him back from his thoughts. Are you okay? The master is calling you. Oh. Sun Quan simply nodded but continued to fall into deep thought. Seeing this, Tang Yu smiled. Sure enough, he was still a child. In his opinion, the reason why Sun Quan had performed so well before was mainly because Sun Quan had no pressure. He was just here to play so he could perform beyond his level. But now Sun Quan was suddenly elected. He was unprepared, surprised and happy, and naturally was stunned. Mr. Qin. The examiner urged. Qin Chuan politely waved goodbye to the talented people gathered around him and walked towards Sun Quan. It seemed that when Qin Chuan came over, Tang Yu's face darkened and he turned around and left. In response, Qin Chuan showed a bitter smile. Mr. Sun, please. Qin Chuan walked to Sun Quan and let Sun Quan go first. Sun Quan glanced at Qin Chuan, strangely said nothing, and walked ahead without being polite. Unconsciously, Sun Quan silently used "let me think twice" for the second time today. This unexpected development disrupted Sun Quan's plan, but it was precisely because the plan was disrupted that Sun Quan suddenly woke up and discovered many details that he had not noticed. Therefore this second time of "let me think twice" was both a resimulation of a brand new future for Sun Quan and a way to give himself enough time to sort out everything that was happening now. Why did Yuan Wei suddenly interrupt the assessment and choose Sun Quan? You have to know that from the beginning to the end Sun Quan has not been able to pull away from the others. Can the lead of 2 questions determine the outcome? Is Yuan Wei really so anxious that he can't even wait to see the end? Therefore Sun Quan judged that Yuan Wei had chosen him directly for other reasons, and since he had chosen him he didn't want Sun Quan to lose in the end, so he ended the exam early. So what unique qualities did Sun Quan have that Yuan Wei valued? Young? If Qin Xuan wasn't there Sun Quan might have thought so, but now that Qin Xuan was there Sun Quan didn't think so. So what qualities did Sun Quan and Qin Xuan have in common? No idea, the two were completely different types. If Yuan Wei's choice made Sun Quan feel strange, then Qin Xuan also made Sun Quan very puzzled. In the first of the 3 illusions Sun Quan had to look at the questions in advance, so like everyone else he answered the questions honestly. After the exam the invigilator announced the correct answers on the spot. After all, students in this era are very serious, and questions that they can't answer will always linger in their minds, especially some obscure questions. If you don't have enough books at home you may not be able to find the answers. Only by solving the doubts on the spot can everyone make the trip worthwhile. It was also at this time that Sun Quan wrote down many answers that he didn't know. Then the examiner called Yang Xiu and Qin Xuan away separately. Obviously these two were the first and second place in this exam. They passed the written test and now had to go for an interview. That was why Sun Quan determined that Qin Xuan was the biggest dark horse and his knowledge was even higher than Wang Can and Ruan Yu. As a result, in this reality that has been changed by Sun Quan, Qin Xuan actually once again became one of the top 2. Is this really just a coincidence? If Sun Quan had not doubted Qin Xuan because of the chess question before, he would not have found it strange like other talented people. But now Sun Quan couldn't help but wonder if there was some unknown inside story. Chapter 30, Doubt and Decision. According to Sun Quan's speculation, Qin Xuan's knowledge should not be enough for him to break into the top 2 twice, so is Qin Xuan the designated second place? Just like Tang Yu was also the designated 5th seed player. Once Sun Quan accepted this setting he felt it made sense. First of all, since Tang Yu could get Yuan Wei to open a back door, he must be of extraordinary status. How could Tang Yu regard Qin Xuan as an enemy? Tang Yu must have been unable to do anything to Qin Xuan in other ways and even suffered a setback, so he wanted to get back at Qin Xuan here. Therefore Qin Xuan, who has a similar status to Tang Yu, actually has the possibility of being helped by Yuan Wei. Think about it carefully. In the first Sansi illusion, the reason why Sun Quan judged Qin Xuan to be the biggest dark horse was that the examiner called him and Yang Xiu away, but in fact the results of everyone were not announced. Except for Qin Xuan himself and the examiners, who would know how many questions Qin Xuan answered correctly. Because Yang Xiu was also among them, Sun Quan, including other students, took it for granted that Qin Xuan would be a student tyrant. Since Qin Xuan came from another place, everyone didn't know his background, but they didn't feel suspicious. It was just unexpected that this person was so powerful. If the above speculation is correct, it can also explain why Yuan Wei suddenly ended the assessment, because Qin Xuan must at least be in the top 2. Sun Quan's actions made it clear at a glance how many questions everyone answered and how many points they got, and Yuan Wei could no longer tamper with the final results. So in order to ensure that Qin Xuan can at least get second place, he had to choose to decisively end the exam before he was left behind. This can explain why Yuan Wei, who was extremely optimistic about Sun Quan, wanted to bring Qin Xuan with him. Because Yuan Wei didn't really like Sun Quan that much, otherwise wouldn't he have just chosen Sun Quan? Bringing Qin Xuan with him was Yuan Wei's real purpose. Even Yuan Shao failed to notice this. Of course, it was not that Yuan Shao was not as smart as Sun Quan, but that Yuan Shao was not like Sun Quan, who could compare the 2 different futures. After coming out of the second Sansi illusion, Sun Quan once again looked at Qin Xuan strangely, as confused as before. In this illusion, Sun Quan not only knew what Yuan Wei would do next and determined his final victory in advance, but he still couldn't figure out the identity of Qin Xuan. Tang Yu was just a bystander this time, and in fact Qin Xuan was also a bystander. Otherwise Yuan Wei could have just chosen him as his personal disciple in private, so why would he have to hold such a special selection competition? In fact, in the third thought illusion, Second thought, the winner was Sun Quan, which also proved this point. Therefore Sun Quan was very puzzled. Since they were all here to make a cameo appearance, why didn't Qin Chuan keep a low profile like Tang Yu? Why did he have to be the second place? Was it just to make a name for himself in Kyoto? If Tang Yu's target was Qin Chuan, then what was Qin Chuan's target? Mr. Sun, is there any problem? Qin Chuan suddenly spoke up. Sun Quan kept looking at him, and the key point was that he looked at him secretly so Qin Chuan would naturally care and be curious. No, I was just wondering how someone could be so handsome. Sun Quan made up an excuse to reply. Please excuse me, Mr. Sunday. I am just a piece of ugly face, how can I compare to your talent? Qin Chuan said. Sun Quan smiled. Mr. Qin, please forgive me for making a fool of myself. Talent is nothing compared to a good-looking appearance. If I had to choose, I would rather be as handsome as you. Sun Quan's words were meant to be a joke, but Qin Chuan was slightly stunned and he was quite emotional. Because Sun Quan's words were not false but rather a common phenomenon in today's world. In this era, many times people value appearance more than talent. Of course, this is not about women's appearance but men's appearance. Handsome people are more likely to be valued, more likely to be given important tasks, and more likely to be favored by others. For example, Yuan Shao was obviously born out of wedlock, but because he looked better than Yuan Shu, he was liked by his uncles and uncles since he was a child. The different care he received when he was a child naturally affected his growth. For example, Cao Cao later saw the Han's envoys and felt that he was not handsome enough, so he asked Cui Yen, who looked handsome, to pretend to be him. For example, Pang Tong, the Phoenix child, was obviously very talented, but because he was ugly he encountered obstacles everywhere. There are countless similar examples which have long been a trend that is difficult to change in this era. So Sun Quan's words at this time, in his opinion, were humorous and a joke, but to Qin Chuan it was Sun Quan mocking him for having only good looks. He was not well educated but relied on his looks to get here. Mr. Sun has misunderstood. Qin Chuan smiled bitterly. Sun Quan was confused. The two of them were not on the same wavelength at all. Where did I misunderstand? Speechless, Sun Quan's question was heard as a rhetorical question by Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan hesitated to speak, wanting to explain the reason to Sun Quan, but he didn't know where to start. After all, it seems that Sun Quan is quite prejudiced against him. Even if Qin Chuan wants to explain, Sun Quan must be willing to listen. As for the source of prejudice, seeing that Sun Quan was so close to Tang Yu just now, isn't it clear enough? Just like that, one confused and the other heavy-hearted, the two, led by the examiner, entered a main hall where Yuan Wei was waiting for them. When seeing Yuan Wei, Sun Quan suddenly made an unexpected decision in his mind, that is to deliberately behave unsatisfactorily later. Sun Quan wanted to see if Yuan Kuei would still choose him against his conscience if he performed worse than Qin Chuan in this so-called interview. If Yuan Kuei finally chose Qin Chuan, it would mean that Sun Quan had overthought it before. Yuan Kuei was optimistic about Qin Chuan because Qin Chuan was indeed a top student, which was why he ranked in the top 2 twice. And if Sun Quan performed badly enough but Yuan Kuei did not choose Qin Chuan, it would prove that Qin Chuan was indeed a backdoor candidate and his purpose was just to be the second place. Of course, Sun Quan couldn't do it too obviously, or he could anger Yuan Wei. So Sun Quan just wanted to act as mediocre as possible, occasionally exposing a few shortcomings. In his opinion, Qin Chuan was not an ordinary person and he could never be worse than him. This is a test by Sun Quan, a test that can bring Sun Quan closer to the truth. In this case, why didn't Sun Quan choose to test it in the Sansi illusion? One reason is that he doesn't want to use up his skills too early. Although there is a card called Creating Out of Nothing, it can't be used casually, and the biggest reason is that this is in line with Sun Quan's own wishes. Don't forget that Sun Quan never really wanted to be the first. Yuan Kuei's direct disciple? In Sun Quan's eyes, it was nothing. In the coming chaotic times, this little bit of capital was not only meaningless, but it would also restrict Sun Quan's freedom and prevent him from being lazy. Originally, Sun Quan was willing to give those guys a slap in the face, but now his goal has not been achieved at all. In this case, why should Sun Quan still be Yuan Kuei's direct disciple and ask for trouble? So Sun Quan really wanted to lose, and he really wanted to give this opportunity to Qin Chuan. If he could give in, that would be the best, but if he couldn't give in, then Sun Quan's actions would not be meaningless. If he performed a little worse, Yuan Wei would have lower expectations of him and Yuan Wei would not be so strict with him in the future, right? Chapter 31. I am not only nervous but also greedy. Please take a seat, both of you. Yuan Wei was as friendly as ever. It seemed as if there was no trace of the authority of a superior in him at all. He was just like a kind and amiable old man. Thank you, Master Taifu. Sun Quan and Qin Xuan sat down one after another. Qin Xuan was very relaxed and at ease. No matter who he was facing or what the occasion was, he always maintained his demeanor. Sun Quan, on the other hand, seemed a little reserved, like a primary school student who was called to the office by his class teacher for the first time. Even though it was not for punishment, Sun Quan was cautious, lowered his head and dared not speak. This behavior is completely different from the one he showed outside just now. If Yuan Wei and Qin Xuan didn't even notice this little detail, then soon they would have no choice but to pay attention to it. After you are seated, tea is naturally served. As soon as the tea was served, Sun Quan acted as if he was thirsty and wanted to drink some water to cover up his nervousness. Then with a clang he dropped the teacup. Oh. Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Sun Quan hurriedly put things in order. Yuan Wei and Qin Xuan frowned slightly. Are they nervous? That's right, nervous. This is the most reasonable and the most effective way to cover up everything. Sun Quan could answer every question when he was outside, but now that he is inside, he suddenly can't answer anything. Is this reasonable? Therefore, Sun Quan can't make a fuss about his knowledge, so he can only make a fuss about his emotions. Some top students are very confident in the exam room and write with great ease, but they perform poorly in the interview room, stammering and illogical. This is obviously because they are nervous, which makes them unable to perform at their original level. Although there may not be many such people, they do exist. When others see this, they will only feel pity but not surprise. Now Sun Quan disguised himself as such a person so that everything he did afterwards would be reasonable. No problem. Yuan Wei asked his servants to tidy up the dishes and gave Sun Quan another cup of tea. Mr. Sun, there's no need to be so reserved. I called you here just to have a casual chat. Besides, we may meet many times in the future. Yuan Wei said. This was already a very direct hint. Pity. Yes. Sun Quan lowered his head and answered in panic, obviously still unable to calm down. Yuan Wei and Qin Xuan looked at each other. Could such a guy really be competent for the job? Originally, according to Sun Quan's previous performance outside, Sun Quan was definitely a newborn calf who was not afraid of tigers. He was the type who was not afraid of anything. Especially at the beginning of the second round, Sun Quan was able to ignore Yuan Wei's warning and continued to answer questions. It's not an exaggeration to call him bold and reckless. But why is such a guy afraid now? Why is he nervous? For a moment, Yuan Wei and Qin Xuan thought of the same thing as Tang Yu before. That is, the original Sun Quan was just here for fun without any pressure, so he was naturally active and even performed beyond his level. Sun Quan never really thought that he would win. But now everything happened too suddenly, catching Sun Quan off guard. Whether it was surprise or pressure, it suddenly enveloped him. After all, Sun Quan was just a little kid, and it was possible that he would be crushed all of a sudden. Ahem. Both of you are outstanding talents of the younger generation. You both performed very well in this selection. I wonder what you think of each other. Yuan Wei broke the silence and spoke. Qin Xuan looked up and saw that Sun Quan seemed to be still in a daze, so he took the initiative to speak. Mr. Sun is extremely knowledgeable and smart. Qin Xuan is ashamed of himself. Everything that happened before is just the tip of the iceberg. I believe that if we continue to compete, the gap between Qin Xuan and Mr. Sun will only get bigger and bigger. I admire you. Qin Xuan's words really complimented Sun Quan. Most people thought that if the competition continued, Sun Quan would lose, but Sun Quan would definitely not accept it, so Qin Xuan deliberately brought up this topic and lowered his own attitude to the lowest level, which must have made Sun Quan feel comfortable. Whether Qin Xuan really thought so or was just being polite, at least he expressed his goodwill to Sun Quan. What do you think, Mr. Sun? Yuan Wei reminded Sun Quan. Ah. Oh. Sun Quan quickly raised his head and looked at Qin Chuan as if he was looking at Qin Chuan for the first time and seriously thinking about Qin Chuan's strengths. Qin Chuan smiled at Sun Quan, hoping to ease his tension. Then I heard Sun Quan say, well. Young Master Qin is so handsome. I've never seen anyone so handsome before. Sun Quan is ashamed of himself. Obviously Sun Quan couldn't think of what to say for a long time and his words were incoherent. Awkward. Even a cool person like Qin Chuan couldn't help but blush. This was probably the most embarrassing scene he had ever encountered. How should he respond to Sun Quan now? Praise? Overpraise? If Sun Quan was being sarcastic when he said he was handsome when he first came, then now Sun Quan obviously didn't mean it. It seems that he really couldn't think of anything else for a while, so he said it without thinking. But it is precisely because of this that this is the biggest irony. The biggest impression Qin Chuan left on people was only his appearance? To the point that in his panic and confusion he couldn't even think of other aspects? Haha, Mr. Sun is a quick-witted person and I admire him for what he says. Yuan Wei laughed and smoothed things over for Qin Chuan. I won't say more, you two. I believe you know what you are here for. Sun Quan and Qin Chuan nodded at the same time. It's hard to get to know a person in such a short time, and I don't choose my disciples solely based on their knowledge. Yuan Wei said and asked someone to put out a chessboard. How about this, you two play a game of chess on the spot and judge a person's character by his chess performance? Gurgle. Sun Quan swallowed his saliva, his eyes shining, and said, So if I win then? Humph, not only am I nervous but I'm also greedy. How about that? Judging a person's character by his chess skills? Before we even start, I'll let you see it directly. Haha, that depends on how beautifully you win. Yuan Wei laughed, not knowing what impression Sun Quan had already made on him. Sun Quan nodded excitedly. Beautiful, of course it's beautiful as long as the other party wins beautifully, that's enough. To be honest, Sun Quan felt that Yuan Wei's bias was too strong. From the previous question we can see that Qin Chuan's chess skills are very average. He is probably just getting started. Otherwise Sun Quan would not have won so easily in the Sansi illusion. Of course winning is easy, but winning beautifully is difficult. After all, Sun Quan's own chess skills are also average. However, if you want to lose beautifully, isn't it easy? And just like that the game begins. It was unknown whether Yuan Wei was too disappointed with Sun Quan or hoped that Sun Quan would not be too nervous, so after looking at the situation for a few steps he quietly left. Only Sun Quan and Qin Chuan were left in the hall. Hey, you're kidding. Sun Quan curled his lips. He really dared to leave the two of them here. Aren't they afraid that they might fight directly if they disagree? You have to know that this is a martial arts world. It's not impossible for them to fight privately and decide the winner directly. Of course, despite all the complaints, Sun Quan didn't think Qin Chuan would bully the weak. Hey, he was a stranger, but he trusted him so much. Was it because he was so handsome? Mr. Sun, you don't want to lose on purpose, do you? Qin Chuan suddenly spoke after a few moves. Chapter 32, The Spirit of Competition. What? Sun Quan's hand trembled. Could it be that he was noticed? Was it because his acting skills were not good enough, or had Qin Chuan seen through the clues in this short opening that he was actually a hidden Go master who was playing dumb? This shouldn't be the case. When Sun Quan was in the Sansi illusion, why didn't he feel how powerful Qin Chuan was? Could it be that the other party also wanted to lose to him on purpose? Sun Quan had made all sorts of calculations, but he had not expected that Qin Chuan and Yuan Kuei were actually in the same group. In other words, Sun Quan's examiner was not only Yuan Kuei but also Qin Chuan, who was his competitor. There are many hypocrites in this world who say one thing in front of others and another behind their backs. Some students are good students in front of their teachers, but they do all kinds of bad things in private. Therefore, if you want to really see through a person and really understand his character, it is impossible to do it whether it is a so-called written test or an interview. Yuan Wei left on purpose not because he couldn't stand it anymore nor to relieve the pressure on Sun Quan but because he wanted to see through Qin Xuan how much of Sun Quan's true nature would be exposed in private. Why do you say that, Mr. Qin? Sun Quan looked up and asked and simply stopped making any move. Momentum. Qin Xuan did not hide anything and directly stated his reasons. Whether a person really wants to win or just pretends to want to win is completely different in terms of momentum. Just now when he was outside, Master Sun faced many talented people with great momentum and left no way out for anyone. Obviously he really wanted to win. But now although Qin Xuan is not good at chess and cannot see Master Sun's chess moves, Master Sun has no momentum at all and there is no sharpness in his moves. Qin Xuan can still sense it. So this makes people wonder, does Master Sun not want to win? Damn it! Sun Quan couldn't help but want to curse. You can feel something as ethereal as momentum. Why don't you be a weather forecaster? This is also Sun Quan's habit that harmed him. Sun Quan only thought about acting and logic but forgot that this is a martial arts world and it is an extraordinary martial arts world. When masters fight, regardless of their martial arts moves, there is always a collision of momentum. To use a common saying in the martial arts world, if you can't even sense the opponent's murderous intent, how can you survive? Except for assassins who have special skills to hide their aura, murderous intent is the most easily sensed momentum by martial artists. Similarly, although chess is not a martial arts competition and has nothing to do with martial arts skills, the spirit of competition should always be there. Without mentioning the meaning behind this game of chess, even in an ordinary chess game, as long as both players want to win, they will inevitably have a spirit of competition. In the Sansi illusion, Sun Quan did play chess with Qin Xuan with the idea of winning, so there was nothing wrong with that. But now just an opening, Qin Xuan has already noticed the problem. Of course Qin Xuan was definitely not a simple person. You know, the so-called chess spirit is much weaker than the murderous spirit. Qin Xuan could actually make a judgment from this aspect, which shows how sharp his sense is. If an ordinary person wanted to harm him, it would probably just be a thought and Qin Xuan might be able to detect it immediately. Don't want to win? How could that be? What reason do I have not to win? Sun Quan asked back. Qin Xuan talked to him about momentum, so he talked to Qin Xuan about logic. If I really didn't want to win, why would I have acted so outstandingly in the beginning? That's right, this is exactly what Qin Xuan finds difficult to understand. But this does not mean that there is no logic. It can only be said that Sun Quan wanted to win very much at the beginning, but suddenly for some reason he changed his mind temporarily. This is exactly what I wanted to ask you, sir. Qin Xuan directly threw the question back to Sun Quan, indicating that he was very confident in his feelings and did not think he would be wrong. Sun Quan narrowed his eyes. Then I am also curious. Regardless of whether I really don't want to win or not, even if I really don't want to win, isn't this a good thing for Master Qin? Sun Quan stared at Qin Xuan and said, besides, compared to me, Master Qin doesn't seem to have much fighting spirit, right? Pretend. This is naked pretense. It would be strange if Sun Quan could feel any competitive spirit. However, as I said before, feelings are not important, he can talk about logic. According to Sun Quan's previous analysis, Qin Xuan's goal is probably just to be the second place. If that is true, then Qin Xuan, who is playing against him at this moment, must have no intention of winning. After hearing what Sun Quan said, Qin Xuan suddenly smiled, revealing an extremely charming smile. Seeing young Master Sun like this, Qin Xuan finally felt relieved. After all, young Master Sun's performance just now was really worrying. In Qin Xuan's eyes, no matter whether Sun Quan was acting just now, Sun Quan has finally returned to normal. Not only has he regained his momentum, but he is also as imposing as he was outside before. Mr. Qin, what you said makes me worried. Who are you? What is your purpose? With such a good opportunity, one believe everyone wants to win, right? Since Qin Xuan had said this, Sun Quan might as well lay his cards on the table and stop playing dumb. In Sun Quan's opinion, the final choice was made by Yuan Kuei, not Qin Xuan. If neither of them wanted to win and the competition was vicious, it was hard to tell what the outcome would be. So it was better to just draw a line and let everyone decide the winner. I wonder what the talented people out there would think if they knew that two people who were competing to lose made it to the final. What about Mr. Sun? You also said, why would you give up such a good opportunity? Qin Chuan also asked. Sun Quan spread his hands. Is there any point in going on like this? It's endless. Since young Master Sun is unwilling to say anything, Qin Chuan naturally has no choice. However, there is no way to guarantee what choice Master Yuan will make in the end. Qin Chuan said lightly. Sun Quan was furious. Are you threatening me? He didn't care that he was small and jumped up directly as if he wanted to compete with Qin Chuan in martial arts. Qin Chuan was still as calm as ever, as if he was not worried at all that Sun Quan would really dare to hit him, or rather he was confident that Sun Quan would definitely not be able to beat him. Threat? You are joking, sir. Whether in knowledge or intelligence, Qin Chuan is no match for you. Isn't it natural for Tutor Yuan to choose you? Qin Chuan said. Ha ha. Sun Quan sneered. When it comes to being cunning and treacherous, Sun Quan is ashamed of himself. At this moment Sun Quan was completely on the same side as brother Tang Yu. This Qin Chuan was so annoying, he was definitely the public enemy of all men. This, you tell me everything you know about the secret of longevity and I'll tell you what method I practice. Everyone gets what they need and it's fair and reasonable. Sun Quan proposed. Qin Chuan glanced at Sun Quan calmly. How can I believe that what you say is true? He knew that Sun Quan was a very shrewd guy. It was entirely possible that he would make up a story to deceive him, and he might even go back on his word and not keep his promise. Then I can't be sure that what you said is true. Let's all be fair. Sun Quan replied. You know that your martial arts are meaningless to me, but knowing the secret of immortality should be beneficial to you, right? Qin Chuan said. The initiative was on his side. He didn't believe that Sun Quan was just curious. Sun Quan shrugged his shoulders, acting quite relaxed. If you don't want to, forget it. I still don't believe that you are the only one in the world who knows. I'll go back and ask my father. At worst I can ask Master Yuan some other day. After all, I'm already his disciple. He wouldn't refuse to tell me such a small thing, right? Qin Chuan smiled lightly and said. I am definitely not the only one in the world who knows this, but the two people you mentioned may not know this either. Qin Chuan did not lie. First, the information about the secret of immortality was indeed secret. Second, just as Sun Quan thought the secret of immortality was a piece of useless information. It was normal that Yuan Wei did not know about such an unimportant thing. Of course, if he wanted to, Yuan Wei should be able to find out about it. You are not lying to me, Sun Quan muttered. Qin Chuan just looked at Sun Quan and didn't answer. After all, Sun Quan might not believe what he said. The initiative was always in Qin Chuan's hands. Well, as long as you tell me, I will try my best to cooperate with you. Whether it's climbing a mountain of swords or going through a sea of fire, as long as you tell me, I will do it. Sun Quan said. Isn't this what Qin Chuan cares about the most? Then Sun Quan will trade with him on the thing he cares about the most. After all, in the Sansi illusion, Sun Quan can say whatever he wants. Oh? This surprised Qin Chuan. Did Sun Quan really care about the secret of immortality, or did he not take his promise seriously at all? I still say that how can I believe that what you said is true? Qin Chuan said. It was obvious that Qin Chuan was also moved. As long as he was sure that Sun Quan's promise was valid, he was willing to tell everything. Sun Quan's eyes turned and he suddenly took out a gold ingot from his arms and stuffed it directly into Qin Chuan's hand. Qin Chuan frowned with a look of displeasure on his face. You think I'm a greedy person? No, Sun Quan shook his head quickly. Brother Qin, you are such a great man, of course you don't care about these gold and silver things, but I am different. I am greedy. I give this ingot of gold to you for safekeeping. If I cheated you, then you won't return it to me. As he said this, he put on a painful expression. Qin Chuan found it hilarious. Regardless of whether Sun Quan loved money or not, the fact that he could easily take out a gold ingot showed that Sun Quan did not value this little money. It was rare that Qin Chuan even joked with Sun Quan and took the gold ingots. Before Sun Quan had time to be happy, he heard Qin Chuan say, "This is my reward for saving you just now." Hey! Are you sure? Saving a person is so expensive. Do you have diamonds on your body? Besides, you didn't save me but those guys. Go ask them for money. Sun Quan was certainly unhappy, but now he had to ask for help from others, so he could only swallow this loss in silence. Okay. Sun Quan gritted his teeth and took out another thing from his arms, a short sword. This is called the Jiujiang sword, a unique treasure in the world. It can cut iron like mud. Now my sincerity is enough. Qin Chuan took the dagger doubtfully and drew it out of its sheath. Ah! It's really extraordinary. How is it, Brother Qin? Sun Quan hurriedly moved closer. Qin Chuan threw the Jiujiang sword back to Sun Quan without hesitation. Sun Quan was extremely disappointed. No? This is the most impressive thing he has. I tell you. Qin Chuan said with a smile. Qin Chuan originally wanted to have a good relationship with Sun Quan, so how could he really push him into a corner and do something that puts the cart before the horse? Ah? Sun Quan didn't react for a moment, then he was ecstatic. Really? Brother Qin, you are the best person in the world. As he said this, he pretended to give Qin Chuan a warm hug. Qin Chuan gently dodged Sun Quan. Okay, you want to listen, don't you? Please speak. Please speak. Please speak quickly. Sun Quan stood at attention quickly, almost making a fool of himself. You know the time for this Sansi illusion is limited. If he doesn't finish listening to the end, who can Sun Quan cry to? This is the third time today that I have to use my Sansi skill. However, Qin Chuan's answer was unexpectedly simple. The Imperial Palace. The secret of immortality is now in the Imperial Palace. Sun Quan was stunned for a moment, then slapped his thigh. Oops. I should have thought of that earlier. Chapter 37 interrupted at a critical moment. The secret of longevity. The secret of longevity, as the name suggests, is the secret of longevity. In this world, who wants to live forever and who doesn't want to die? That's right, the Emperor. Of course, there are many people who don't want to die, but the Emperor is definitely the one with the most resources. Look at how much manpower and material resources Qin Shi Huang spent in order to achieve immortality. Sun Quan can even imagine that Qin Shi Huang might have tried to practice the secret of immortality before his death. Not only Qin Shi Huang but later Emperor Yang Guang of the Sui dynasty sent Yuanji to find the secret of immortality, which is also a vivid example. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the most likely place for the eternal life secret to appear is in the Imperial Palace. The Han Dynasty has been passed down for so many years, and there will always be some emperors who are afraid of death and seek the method of immortality and obtain the eternal life secret. However, after practicing it, they did not make any sense, and eventually the eternal life secret was lost in a corner of the palace and became a collection. If one day there is another emperor who is afraid of death, he will take it out and practice it again, and so on. Therefore, although the eternal life secret is useless, it is bound to be well preserved. In short, the appearance of the Qingxingju in the palace is the most logical possibility, but it is only a possibility. Qin Chuan actually said that the Qingxingju is in the palace, which means that he is not just hearsay, nor is he just guessing, but has a definite source of information. Being able to know such a secret in the palace, this Qin Chuan is indeed extraordinary. Brother Qin, do you know where the eternal life secret is kept in the palace? Sun Quan suddenly asked. This question is very sensitive and will definitely arouse Qin Chuan's suspicion. After all, what if you know it? Are you planning to break into the palace? But Sun Quan has no time to beat around the bush. According to Sun Quan's analysis just now, the eternal life secret must have been well preserved, but it is not like a valuable item like the jade seal that can be used at any time, let alone an ornament. It is very difficult to judge where it is stored. Even if Sun Quan has the opportunity to enter the palace, he may not be able to find it if he is given 3 days and 3 nights, so Sun Quan must obtain accurate information. Since Qin Chuan knew so much inside information, maybe he had seen the eternal life secret in the palace. Sun Quan did not dare to ask such a sensitive question in reality and could only ask it in Sansi's illusion. Why are you asking this? Qin Chuan indeed began to doubt Sun Quan. Of course I want to learn. Sun Quan did not hide it. However, this made Qin Chuan even more difficult to understand. Well, The Secret of Immortality is indeed one of the 4 great books, but there are 4 of them. Why is he obsessed with the secret of immortality? You should know that no one has ever mastered the secret of immortality. It is totally illogical to come here for martial arts. So Sun Quan's goal is immortality? Come on, how could an 8-year-old child have such an idea? Those who insist on the secret of immortality are always dying old men. Even if it is just an illusory hope, they want to give it a try. So why did Sun Quan want the secret of immortality? Are you confident that you can learn the art of immortality? Qin Xuan guessed, could it be that you got the correct method to practice the art of immortality from somewhere? You can think of it this way. Sun Quan said directly. After all, in the illusion, he was not afraid of being guilty of possessing the treasure. Brother Qin, you are the best. Just tell me. Qin Xuan shook his head. I don't know exactly where the secret of immortality is stored. Besides, even if I knew, I couldn't tell you. You are clearly trying to mess things up. But. Sun Quan, who was originally disappointed, suddenly brightened up his eyes. But at this moment. What happened? What have you done? Finally, someone noticed the problem here. Seeing that the others were falling down in pain with only Sun Quan and Qin Xuan standing, the people who came naturally subconsciously assumed that Sun Quan and Qin Xuan were the perpetrators. Depend on. Sun Quan was furious. How could he be interrupted at such a critical moment? Brother Qin, tell me quickly. Sun Quan ignored the person who came and pulled Qin Xuan and said. Unfortunately, Qin Xuan didn't know that Sun Quan had limited time, and in his opinion what he was going to say to Sun Quan next was not suitable to be said in front of others. So it was better to finish the things here first and then talk to Sun Quan in detail. It turns out to be young Master Yang. Qin Xuan said the man who came was Yang Xiu, one of the 4 young talents. Oh? It's Master Qin and Master Sun. Yang Xiu was obviously also surprised. However, no matter who it was, the person lying on the ground had some friendship with him. Please give me an explanation. Yang Xiu said with a dark face. Brother Yang. Brother Yang, save me. It was them, they took the initiative to help first. A man on the ground saw the reinforcements and quickly crawled to Yang Xiu's feet to complain. Brother Chen, where are you hurt? Are you okay? Yang Xiu quickly squatted down and helped the man up. Humph. Those who are innocent will be innocent. Sun Quan snorted coldly. If it were the real world, he would definitely reason with others, but now Sun Quan really didn't want to waste time. Brother Qin, let's go. There will be justice for today's matter in the future. Before Qin Xuan could say anything, Yang Xiu on the other side flew into a rage. You want to leave after you beat someone up? If it was just Sun Quan here, then no matter who wins or loses, Yang Xiu would be able to guess the cause and effect and naturally would not embarrass Sun Quan. But now Sun Quan is with Qin Xuan, and with Qin Xuan's current status as Yuan Wei's quasi-disciple, they think so. Yang Xiu believes that his friends, no matter how stupid they are, will not take the initiative to provoke Qin Xuan. Therefore it can only be Qin Xuan who bullies others by relying on his status. Yang Xiu even suspected that his friends were afraid to attack Qin Xuan, which led to such a one-sided situation at the scene. Yang Xiu was a very proud man. He was very dissatisfied with today's selection. He was dissatisfied with Sun Quan and Qin Xuan. Now that he had such an opportunity, Yang Xiu believed that he was on the moral side. How could he let Qin Xuan and Sun Quan go? Mr. Qin, you don't think that just because you have attached yourself to the Yuan family you can do whatever you want in the capital city? Yang Xiu stared at Qin Xuan. Sun Quan was just a little kid and was never considered a protagonist by Yang Xiu. Mr. Yang, you misunderstood. I saw these people teaming up to bully Mr. Sun, so I stepped in to help them out in case things got out of hand, Qin Xuan explained. Oh? Yang Xiu was stunned. If that was the case, it made sense. Is this true? Yang Xiu asked with his head down. No. No. It was Sun Quan who started it first. We were just passive in our resistance. Young Master Chen shouted hurriedly, Brother Yang, don't be fooled by his age. Sun Quan is a soldier with great martial arts skills. All of us combined are no match for him. Qin Chuan's joining is simply aiding and abetting the tyrant. Everything I said is true. I swear. Yang Xiu's face darkened and he looked up at Qin Chuan and Sun Quan again. Master Qin and Master Sun, may I ask how you can explain this? Qin Chuan smiled bitterly. It seemed that he couldn't explain it for a while. It was also Sun Quan's fault. Qin Chuan couldn't help but glared at Sun Quan. You said you were the one being bullied, why did you start it first? Moreover, you were obviously injured by the dagger, why did you recover so quickly? Now that it has scarred, it is considered to be an old injury. How can it be used as evidence? As for the bloodstains, you should know that in the fight just now it was not only you, Sun Quan, who shed blood at the scene. How can you prove that the blood on your hands is not someone else's? Of course, this is no longer important. The important thing is that, judging from the current situation, even if Qin Chuan joins in and continues to fight, Sun Quan will really be the winner in the end. The other side's rhetoric left Qin Chuan speechless. His rash intervention made things more complicated. Chapter 38 Kong Ming. Compared to Qin Chuan's wry smile, Sun Quan's face was even worse. As things had developed to this point, Yang Xiu had a preconceived idea and could not explain it clearly. Confrontation? Both sides insisted on their own opinions. Even if you talk until tomorrow, you can't tell the result. After all, there were no cameras in this era. There were no other bystanders at the scene except the parties involved. And looking at Qin Chuan's behavior, he would not leave unless the misunderstanding was explained clearly. This was very difficult to deal with. Someone come. Capture Qin Chuan and Sun Quan. Send them to Imperial Tutor Yuan and let him make the decision. Yang Xiu suddenly gave the order, and the one who took action was the retainer who came to meet him. Qin Chuan believed he was innocent and did not resist. In order to prevent the two from contradicting each other, Qin Chuan and Sun Quan were deliberately separated. Seeing this, Sun Quan's side, there was no chance at all. Thinking of this, Sun Quan suddenly became furious and glared at Yang Xiu fiercely. It was all the fault of this self-righteous smart guy. Reality dividing line. Sun Quan came out of the third thought of Sansi illusion because the time limit had expired. In other words, Sun Quan did not find a chance to continue their conversation with Qin Chuan. What do you want to do? Ha ha ha, Mr. Sun, aren't you very smart? Can't you guess what we want to do? There was a shrill laugh in my ears. Sun Quan narrowed his eyes. He was very unhappy, doubly unhappy, thrice unhappy. Fuck you. A kick to the crotch. The target was not the person laughing in front of him, but the person next to him who had wounded Sun Quan with a dagger in the illusion. The vital part of the person was injured, and this person was knocked out by Sun Quan on the spot. The scene was in a state of confusion. Sun Quan actually dared to attack? A person who was surrounded and bullied actually dared to take the initiative to attack? Moreover, it would be fine if you hit someone, but you didn't hit the person who mocked you in front of you, and the person next to you didn't even provoke you. You are simply not playing by the rules. They start fighting as soon as they disagree. The battle is about to begin. Asshole. Superior. Kill him. A minute later, no one was left standing except Sun Quan. A quick decision was indeed the best solution. It's really useless. So many people bully a little kid like me. Fight. Keep fighting. Sun Quan kicked the people on the ground one by one. He was just venting his anger. Sun Quan could not tell Qin Chuan a lot of the information in Sansi's illusion in reality, so he could not follow the script again. Fortunately, Qin Chuan is not Jiujiang, and Sun Quan will have many intersections, so what Sun Quan needs to consider now is how to find a suitable time to bring up the topic of Changxingju appropriately and then reach some kind of deal with Qin Chuan. At least Sun Quan can now be sure that Qin Chuan must have a way to help him. But today the three let me think twice skills have been used up and Sun Quan should stop. In order to prevent other accidents, Sun Quan had better stay at home for the rest of the day and wait for the arrival of tomorrow's midnight. TSK. Bad luck. Sun Quan cursed inwardly and decisively left the scene. He wanted to quickly reunite with Han Dang and others. Only a group of pitiful and hateful people who were beaten but had no face to complain were left here. In a corner not far away. Senior brother, what do you think of Sun Quan? Qin Chuan's short junior brother asked. Qin Chuan glanced at his junior brother and asked. What about you, Kong Ming? The junior brother called Kong Ming shook his head and smiled bitterly. It's a great shock, a great shock. I thought Sun Quan was just a very talented and smart person, but now it seems that he is also very good at martial arts and he is decisive and fearless, which is quite like the style of a soldier. It can be said that from what has been shown so far, Sun Quan has no weaknesses at all. He is a perfect person who is excellent in all aspects. Moreover, it would be fine if he had no shortcomings. The key is that Sun Quan's advantages are also quite excellent. Whether it is talent or martial arts, he is far superior to his peers. Before coming, Kong Ming thought that he would lose, but only to a few people like Qin Chuan. He lost because of his age and experience. But he never expected that he would be completely defeated by someone the same age as him. He was defeated completely and speechlessly. In fact, the other party did not even take him seriously. Ha! Qin Chuan smiled. It seems that this trip was worthwhile to be able to make my usually proud junior brother say such words on his own initiative. There are always people who are better than you, and there are always things better than you. Master is right. This time my biggest gain may be this. Kong Ming said with a rare maturity for his age. Qin Chuan thought that his junior brother would at least be the best of his generation until he met Sun Quan today. However, who can predict the future? Knowing shame and then being brave, Kong Ming's future will not necessarily be worse than Sun Quan, who was different from ordinary people since childhood. So you have decided to return to Jingjai? Qin Chuan asked. Although they had just come out of the mountains not long ago, Kong Ming had already gained something of his own. If he wanted to catch up with Sun Quan, he would have to work harder than before. Kong Ming nodded and said very seriously. This time when I return to the mountain, I will be in seclusion for at least 10 years. If 10 years is not enough, I will be in seclusion for 20 years. Qin Chuan looked at Kong Ming. 20 years from now you will be 27 or 28. Won't that be too late? Kong Ming smiled. It's not a matter of when or how long it takes to come out of retirement, but a matter of timing. Perhaps 20 years from now will be the perfect time for me to show my talents. Show your skills. Qin Chuan sighed softly. If possible, I hope you will never leave the mountain. Kong Ming's face froze and he immediately bowed to Qin Chuan. Brother, you are right. If possible, I also hope that I will never leave the mountain. Xihang Jingjai in later generations, because it has gone through many dynasties, has taken peace in the world as its own responsibility. But now it is different. Xihang Jingjai was built in the Han Dynasty and has an unclear relationship with the Han Dynasty royal family. Therefore, Xihang Jingjai in this era has only one mission, that is, to support the Han Dynasty. From a certain perspective, the current Xihang Jingjai and the later Xihang Jingjai are two completely different organizations. The most famous example is when Wang Mang usurped the Han Dynasty. Xihang Jingjai supported Liu Xiu, a commoner at the time, and finally set things right and established the Eastern Han Dynasty. Some time ago, during the Yellow Turban Rebellion, Zhang Ju's inexplicable death, many people, including Sun Quan's father Sun Jian, thought that Xihang Jingjai was behind it. Therefore, if Kong Ming is one of the most outstanding disciples of Xihang Jingjai, really had the opportunity to come out of seclusion and show his talents, it would mean that the Han Dynasty was already in danger, which was obviously contrary to the essence of Xihang Jingjai. On the contrary, if Kong Ming never came out of seclusion in his life, it would just prove that during his lifetime the Han Dynasty was prosperous and the world was peaceful. But you, senior brother, this operation is not simple. Please be extremely careful. Kong Ming said solemnly. I am in the sect, looking forward to your safe return. Qin Chuan remained calm as always. Don't worry, I know what Empress Dowager he is thinking and what Master Yuan is hiding. They are using me, but am I not also taking advantage of this rare opportunity? Although I am not the best disciple in the academy, since God has chosen me, I must do something for this world. Looking at Sun Quan, who was gradually walking away, Qin Chuan was silent. The biggest variable in this operation might be this person. Chapter 39. Good news. Yuan Mansion. Because Sun Quan and Qin Xuan left one after another, most of the talented people naturally did not want to stay any longer. Yang Xiu was the representative. They all wanted to report everything that happened here today back to their families. Those who stayed were basically from other places. They had no power in the capital. It was rare to have such a grand event, so they naturally wanted to stay a little longer. And because the news of Yuan Wei's selection of disciples came suddenly, those who could arrive in time must have been talented people who were already near the capital. Chen Kun Chen Shanwen. Ha? Who are you? Chen Kun stopped walking, and the person who called him was a handsome young man. The reason why he was called a young man was that they were relatively old here today, the others were basically teenagers, and this person must be like him, Chen Kun, almost in his 20s. Chen Kun failed to recognize the person, but someone next to him suddenly exclaimed, "You are Guo Jia. Guo Fengxiao. Ah, Xian Pai, Zizhuaji, you still remember me?" Gui Jia said with a smile. "How could I not remember?" Xian Pai patted Gui Jia's shoulder vigorously, feeling like meeting an old friend in a foreign land. "How are you? Have you been doing well these years? It's been a long time." "It's Brother Gua." "Oh, sorry. I haven't seen you for many years. I almost didn't recognize you. I was wondering why you looked so familiar." Chen Kun stepped forward and said, "I will drink 3 cups of wine as punishment and make amends to Brother Gua." The 3 of them were all from Yingchuan with similar ages and were all talented young men, so they naturally knew each other. To put it in a metaphor, they were now college students, but they were junior high school classmates back then. Xian Pai and Gui Jia were both from Yingchuan Yangdi, and they were elementary school classmates, so compared to Chen Kun, he was more familiar with Gui Jia. "Remember the last time we met? Was it 3 years ago or 5 years ago?" "Haha, you see, I can't remember it clearly. Not only should Brother Chen apologize, but I should too," Gui Jia said with a smile. It was obvious that he was trying to help Chen Kun resolve the embarrassment. Everyone here was smart, so they naturally wouldn't say it out loud. "By the way, where have you been in these years? Why is there no news from you? Many of us, including my brother, Xian Ping, elder brother Guotu, and Sen Yu, and others, are very worried about you." Xian Pai couldn't help asking. It turns out that when he was young, Gui Jia, like Xian Pai and others, was a typical child of aristocratic family. Everyone went to school happily and without worries. Unexpectedly, Gui Jia's parents died suddenly of illness and the family fell into poverty. Soon Gui Jia disappeared and cut off contact with everyone. "I'm sorry to have made everyone worried. Due to some reasons, I was unable to say goodbye to everyone at that time. But now I'm back," said Gui Jia, but he did not elaborate on his experiences over the years. Xian Pai patted Gui Jia on the shoulder and didn't ask any more questions, not wanting to bring up Gui Jia's sad past. "Haha, by the way, speaking of Sun Yu, I heard that he is now a high-ranking official in the capital. I must give him a good meal." Gui Jia changed the subject. "Let's go together. Sun Yu will definitely be happy to see you. How can I be missing? Haha, let's call my brother and Brother Guotu and the others too and have a good gathering. When the time comes, we will tell them what happened just now." None of Yang Shou, Wang Can, and Ruan Yu were selected, but an unknown Qin Xuan was made. Guess what their expressions will be? Why say Qin Xuan? Not Sun Quan? Gui Jia suddenly said. Chen Kun and Xian Pai were stunned. Isn't this obvious? Didn't Gui Jia see Sun Quan's expression when he came out just now? Gui Jia shook his head. On the contrary, I think Yuan Taifu actually chose Sun Quan in the end. Oh? Why do you say that? Do you think that Sun Quan is pretending to be so and deceiving us? Chen Kun guessed. Gui Jia showed a strange smile. Why isn't he willing? Chen Kun and Xian Pai, how is that possible? This side. Sun Quan found Chung Pu Zhou Tai and others and went straight home. On the way, Sun Quan kept thinking about the eternal life secret. Even an old lady knew that eggs should not be put in one basket. How could Sun Quan put all his hopes on Qin Xuan? Whether Qin Xuan could be reliable was one thing, but the most important thing was whether there was enough time for Sun Quan to beat around the bush. Qin Chuan must have some purpose. Even if Sun Quan fully cooperates with him, it will take time for Qin Chuan to achieve his goal. But the problem is, if nothing unexpected happens, He Jin will be killed soon, the 10 attendants will be destroyed, Dong Zhuo will enter Luoyang and then depose Emperor Xiao Lu Bian and promote Lu Xie as Emperor Xian. By then the power in the capital will be reshuffled. Will Qin Chuan still have the ability to help Sun Quan borrow the eternal life secret? Even if Qin Chuan had the ability at the latest, he could not do it later than Dong Zhuo burned Luoyang and moved the capital to Chang'an. Besides, Sun Quan could not wait for that day. Not long ago Sun Quan just learned that his father Sun Jian had a grudge against Dong Zhuo. No wonder Sun Jian rushed to the front in the anti-Dong alliance. Since Sun Jian had a grudge against Dong Zhuo, how could Sun Quan stay in the capital when Dong Zhuo entered the capital? Even if nothing happened at the beginning, once the anti-Dong banner was raised outside, it would be strange if Sun Quan was not caught and killed as a sacrifice. Therefore, at the latest, before Dong Zhuo successfully controlled the overall situation in the capital, Sun Quan had to leave regardless of whether he had obtained the eternal life secret at that time. Sun Quan pondered, the best opportunity, or the only opportunity, may be the day when General He Jin is killed. On that day the 10 eunuchs will take the young emperor and the queen mother out of Luoyang city. The palace will be the most chaotic and empty, which will give Sun Quan an opportunity to take advantage of it. But in the final analysis it is still the same problem. The palace is so big. If Sun Quan does not know the specific storage location of the eternal life secret in advance, he may not be able to find it even if he uses 3 skills. What should he do? Second young master, what is the result today? Who did Master Yuan choose in the end? Sun Quan hadn't spoken since he came out, and Changpu finally couldn't help but ask a question. Ah? Oh, you chose me. Sun Quan answered casually. What? Changpu thought he had heard wrongly. No, he thought Sun Quan was joking. After all, Sun Quan was so young, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't be better than all the talented people in Kyoto. Moreover, looking at Sun Quan's bland reaction to this question, did he look like he was chosen? Besides, if he was really chosen, Sun Quan would have told him about it with great enthusiasm long ago without waiting for Changpu to ask. Haha, are you surprised? Sun Quan smiled and tried to act normal. I was surprised too. Look, I still haven't come to my senses yet. Really? Changpu was skeptical. It can't be fake. Sun Quan spread his hands. Well, there's no need to dwell on this issue. The Yuan family will announce the results soon anyway. Haha, second young master, you really are. Changpu was overjoyed and didn't know what to say for a moment. Why don't we hurry up? If the Lord knew, I don't know how happy he would be. Ahem, keep a low profile, we are in public here. So the group quickened their pace and rushed back to where they were staying. Before they even entered the door, Sun Jian had already walked out. Quaner, there's great news. My lord, do you already know? Changpu said subconsciously. No? No what? Sun Jian was stunned, but he continued to say to Sun Quan, Quaner, come in and meet your uncle Yuan. Apparently, because there were guests at home, Sun Jian did not ask Changpu in detail. Uncle Yuan? Sun Quan was a little confused. It's Yuan Shu, the general of the Tiger Guards. Sun Jian reminded him in a low voice and then said with a smile, your uncle Yuan's family happens to have a little girl who is about your age. We have just arranged a marriage for you. What? Chapter 40, I'm sleepy and I'm sending you a pillow. Yuan Shu's daughter? If you want to arrange a marriage for a child, then do it. But if you don't mention De Qiao or Xiao Qiao, at least it should be Jinmi from Hebei. What the hell is Yuan Shu's daughter? Sin it's not that Sun Quan looked down on Yuan Shu's daughter. After all, how can he know the good and bad of a person without even seeing her? But as a modern man, Sun Quan actually rejected arranged marriages. Whether it was the Qiao sisters Jinmi or Diao Chan mentioned by Sun Quan, although he had never seen them, they were definitely idols in Sun Quan's mind. So what if there was no emotional foundation? In modern times, as long as they could marry their idols, I don't know how many people would agree without thinking, not to mention in this era of 3 wives and 4 concubines. Therefore Sun Quan had a fondness for these celebrities. If he married them home, Sun Quan would at least pat his chest and guarantee that he would not let them down. But Yuan Shu's daughter is different. This girl doesn't have any halo. Once he marries her home, what should Sun Quan do if he finds that he doesn't like her? Throw her into the cold palace and ignore her? As a good young man of the era who respects women, Sun Quan can't do such a cold and heartless thing. But if Sun Quan is forced to force love, he will feel unhappy. You say marrying a wife home will make things difficult for himself. Isn't this asking for trouble? In short, Sun Quan is not opposed to blind dates with people he doesn't know, but he is reluctant to get engaged directly. Unfortunately, this matter was not something Sun Quan could decide. Sun Quan knew very well that this was the legendary political marriage. Sun Quan had to marry Yuan Shu's daughter even if he didn't want to. Sun Quan could only hope that Yuan Shu would be more righteous and pick the best one for him. In the eyes of others, Sun Quan had a double blessing today, but Sun Quan himself felt like he had suffered 2 consecutive blows and could not be happy at all. Come to the house. Haha, this must be Zhang Mo, right? He is indeed a young talent, a young talent. Yuan Shu was enthusiastic and pretended to meet Sun Quan for the first time. Sun Quan meets Uncle Yuan. Sun Quan stepped forward and greeted him proactively, looking well behaved. Good boy, really good boy. Yuan Shu gave Sun Jian a thumbs up. Brother Sun, you really gave birth to a good son. Originally at the Yuan family, Yuan Shu thought that Sun Quan was a young and frivolous guy. But now he found that Sun Quan was so well behaved and polite in private. The more Yuan Shu looked at him, the more he liked him. He thought it would be great if this kid could marry into the Yuan family's family. Brother Yuan, you are too kind. This kid is usually very naughty. Sun Jian said with a smile. Being naughty is good. Boys should be naughty. I was very naughty when I was a child, which is why I have achieved what I have today. Yuan Shu boasted while stroking his mustache. Sun Quan curled his lips and said, you have achieved such success because you were born in the Yuan family. It has nothing to do with how naughty you are. By the way, I wonder what the result is today? Yuan Shu suddenly asked Sun Quan with obvious expectation on his face. Beside him, Sun Jian was stunned and quickly looked at Sun Quan. Could it be? Originally, Sun Jian had no hope, so he did not take the initiative to bring up this topic with Sun Quan. But now that Yuan Shu had asked this question and asked it right away, Sun Jian could not help but be suspicious. Did Yuan Shu know something? Otherwise, why would he suddenly come to propose marriage and specifically choose Sun Quan? Not only Sun Jian but Sun Quan was also obviously quite surprised. Could it be that Yuan Wei really had chosen him early on? He just cooperated with Yuan Wei's choice to some extent? No. That's not right. Don't be fooled by appearances. Don't forget that Sun Quan used the let me think 3 times skill to simulate it. In the first think 3 times illusion, Yuan Wei clearly didn't choose him, Sun Quan. So no matter how reasonable the reality seems, it's not the truth. Yuan Wei didn't have a goal in mind beforehand, so how could Yuan Shu have any inside information? Without thinking too much, Sun Quan answered immediately. Sun Quan was lucky enough to be chosen by the Grand Tutor. Really? Sun Jian was pleasantly surprised. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. It's true, my lord. I was just about to talk about this. Cheng Pu interjected. After holding it in for so long, Cheng Pu really couldn't help it. Ha ha ha. You really are worthy of being my son. Sun Jian laughed. Ah, sorry brother Yuan, I lost my composure a little. It's human nature, it's human nature. I've said it before, this is a talented young man. It seems my uncle has the same vision as me. Yuan Shu was secretly happy in his heart. He was right in choosing the right person. Sun Jian looked at Yuan Shu and narrowed his eyes. Did brother Yuan get any news in advance? Sun Jian didn't know the details, but in his opinion this was the highest possibility. Brother Sun, you are wrong. Yuan Shu shook his head and smiled. If I really got wind of this, why would I come here today? Besides, brother Sun, aren't you looking down on your son? In my opinion, Zhang Mo is a true genius. It's not surprising that he was elected. Brother Yuan is right. It's not surprising. It's not surprising. Sun Jian replied. Yes, if there was any rumor Yuan Shu should have come when Yuan Wei sent a letter to Sun Quan. Why wait until today? So is it really Yuan Shu who was very optimistic about Sun Quan? Putting aside his thoughts for the time being, Sun Jian continued to say to Yuan Shu. No matter what, it seems that we are now even closer relatives. Quan'er will study in the Yuan family in the future, and I hope brother Yuan will take good care of him. That's for sure, for sure. Zhengmo is now half my son. I promise that no one in the Yuan family, no in the entire capital, dares to bully him. Yuan Shu patted his chest and promised. As an external official, Sun Jian would leave the capital soon, and then Sun Quan would definitely stay in his Yuan family temporarily. Sun Quan was speechless after hearing this. Is there anyone who forces others to recognize their son like you? If everyone is like you and I am so outstanding, wouldn't the whole world want to recognize me as their son? Of course, despite all the complaints, Sun Quan had to admit that Yuan Shu's sudden intervention made him feel more at ease. With Yuan Shu as his backing, Qin Xuan's so-called risk should not be as great as it was originally, right? At this point, Yuan Shu suddenly smiled mysteriously and whispered to Sun Jian. Moreover, from what I know, this time my uncle is not just selecting a personal disciple. Oh? Sun Jian's eyes moved. Perhaps this was the point. Sure enough, I heard Yuan Shu say. The disciples selected by my uncle this time will go to the palace with my uncle every day to study. What? Everyone at the scene was shocked. Yuan Shu's words were not subtle. In other words, Sun Quan was about to become the tutor of the current emperor. This is serious. Sun Jian couldn't help but grab Yuan Shu to confirm. Hush. Yuan Shu pretended to be silent. Although it will no longer be a secret soon, it is still not allowed to be revealed at this moment. After saying that, Yuan Shu gave Sun Jian a look that said, you know what I mean. Just as Yuan Shu said, this matter would soon no longer be a secret, so Yuan Shu might as well take this opportunity to reveal the secret in advance, which would be considered a favor to the Sun family. The Imperial Palace, the Imperial Palace. If Sun Jian was surprised and happy, then Sun Quan was absolutely stunned. Of course, in the eyes of others, this was his normal reaction. How does the saying go? When you feel sleepy, I'll give you a pillow. P.S. Today I saw someone say that the Three Kingdoms is not suitable for martial arts, or that they are not familiar with Huang Yi's martial arts worldview. In fact, it is not a problem because this book will not focus on martial arts at all. If that is the case, why add a martial arts background? I said at the beginning of the book review that it is to increase the difficulty for the protagonist. Otherwise, as someone said, when you see Diao Chan, let me think twice and then have sex and so on, the protagonist will never do anything else in his life. I personally will not write a protagonist who is a gentleman. It is normal for men to have such thoughts. Hey, you can let me think twice, you can have sex, but if you can't beat her, there is nothing you can do, right? In short, martial arts is to increase the difficulty. Since it is to increase the difficulty, it is impossible to make the protagonist too strong. Since the protagonist is not allowed to become too strong, I can't write too many martial arts chapters to torture the protagonist. So in the beginning, whether it is training or fighting, I just glossed over it. There is not even a martial arts world in this world. In addition, for those who are not familiar with Huang Yi's martial arts worldview, this is a very good suggestion. When there are things like Cihangjingjai and Changxingju in the future, I will add some descriptions in the main text so that book friends who don't know Huang Yi's martial arts at all will not be unable to understand it, and they don't need to make up the settings specifically. Guys, that's for today. Please like and subscribe to my channel. 10 likes for next part. Thanks again.